DC Tyrant. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126. Very weak. Only 3 or 4 minutes after Mike left, Badi felt something strange in the car. His whole body was resisting the magic and the stimulation. The blood began to rush wildly in his body. His skin, which was as white as warm jade, suddenly showed ferocious blue veins like dragons. His fists were clenched tightly, his face was fierce, and his body was stretched out with the beauty of strength, like a Tyrannosaurus Rex waking up and roaring. But at this moment, he felt as if he was surrounded by water. The reaction of magic energy surrounded him, making him feel like he was suffocating in the water, and his heart couldn't breathe. Badi's face was stern and fierce. He held his breath, and his eyes burst into cold light as he looked at Raven. "Someone is releasing magic, teleportation magic," Raven said. She was not surprised by this level of magic, because it was much worse than hers. She could teleport to another star, and the distance was calculated in light years. Then, Badi saw a vortex like a black hole appear in front of the car. The vortex wavered the air and created ripples, distorting the space. In the dark vortex, connected to the other end, one could vaguely see the empty lonely ground inside the vortex, as well as some trees and forests in the dark night. This was a transmission channel, leading to an unknown place. The whole car moved automatically without wind, and the tires left the ground, rushing into the vortex. Badi reacted in an instant, and wanted to rush out of the car with Raven, but when he reached out to hold Raven's waist, and wanted to riot, Raven stopped him. "No problem," Raven said with a somewhat unnatural expression. Badi was too close, and wanted to rush out of the car with her in an instant. Raven hurriedly stopped Badi. She felt that the whole thing in front of her was Badi's strong and broad chest, and she could smell the smell of Badi's chest, a clean and strong smell of warm body temperature from the sun. Badi almost hugged her, broke through the car door and ran out, and rolled on the ground for a few rounds. When Badi heard her words, his eyes flickered. He paused for a moment, then nodded and chose to believe her. In terms of magic, Raven was obviously more professional than him. Facing this situation, Raven was obviously more familiar with it than her. It was just that facing magic, his body's powerless resistance made him feel awe-inspiring. He immediately had an idea in his mind that if possible, he would also like to learn magic to counter the threat of magic to him. The black Suv left the ground, wrapped in magic power, and rushed into the dark vortex. The air twisted and rippled. The vortex spun and shrank quickly, becoming a small dot, twisting and disappearing, like the twisting of air under high temperature. Only some twisted airflow remained, and soon it returned to calm. There were few pedestrians around, but they did not react to this abnormal phenomenon. Even the sudden disappearance of a car here did not seem strange at all. They continued to walk as usual, without noticing anything. "Your enemy?" Badi sat back in his original position. His tense muscle lines relaxed for a moment, and the blue veins on his white jade skin slowly calmed down, but he had greater explosive power. At any time and anywhere, his combat skills are always on guard, ready to burst out with all his strength. Raven frowned slightly, and her dark purple thin lips moved hesitantly. She was a little unsure whether it was Sangan's subordinate, but she finally said hesitantly, "My enemy should not be so weak." Badi was silent. In any case, he could not be called weak, being able to use this kind of teleportation magic. From a scientific perspective, this is already able to control the opening of a wormhole autonomously, achieving the effect of being close at hand and far away from home, and he can run around anywhere on Earth. If explained scientifically, it is unknown how many centuries it will take for the Earth to achieve this effect of opening a wormhole for teleportation. Magic is really magical and mysterious to the extreme. Badi once again felt that magic is really magical to the extreme, and it is a different field from science. The vehicle passed through the vortex and landed suddenly, causing a shake. In the seat, Badi and Raven were sitting firmly and properly, without any impact. The vehicle appeared in a plane. Badi opened the car door and got out of the car. His shoes stepped on the soft mud and grass. Not far away, there were tall trees standing in a row. The night sky was clear and the stars were shining. This was a place with a beautiful environment and no industrial pollution. The grassland of nature was spacious and refreshing. The green and fresh wilderness, the air was filled with the fragrance of plants and soil, and the beautiful starry sky was within reach. When he smelled and saw it, he felt a sense of comfort in his heart, and his mood was broad and happy. Badi looked up at the night sky. The Ursa Major constellation was like a huge spoon. From the extension line of the two stars on the edge of the spoon, there was a brighter star about 5 times the distance between them. It was the North Star, that is, the due north. Then he saw several other constellations, and located his current position from different stars. In an instant, he calculated the distance of each angle, and used the astronomical constellation to locate it. He came to a conclusion. Here is a small island in the Atlantic Ocean. Even on the map, there is no island drawn. They were teleported to this small island, which is at least 3,527 kilometers away from Manhattan, and next to it, 500 kilometers away, is the Azores. This is science, calculating one's position with reason and evidence. In an instant, it was teleported 3,500 kilometers. Badi's eyes were stern. Magic really refreshed his cognition at any time. This is simply a wormhole teleportation technology. Raven opened the car door and wanted to get off. The moment his butt left the seat, his face hesitated for a moment, then turned around to open the car's storage box, took out all the chocolates from it, stuffed them into his cloak, and directly opened a long strip of chocolate, biting it gently with his teeth, chewing the fragrant chocolate, and then got out of the car and came to Badi's side. Her cloak covered her head, lowered her head, revealing her delicate chin. If this scene didn't have her holding chocolate in both hands and chewing chocolate, then she would really be a mysterious magic girl. She chewed the chocolate very seriously. Her dark purple lips were thin and small. She held it in her hands, chewing it mouthful by mouthful, like a hamster. We were teleported to an unknown island 3,500 kilometers away. Badi looked at Raven with a strange expression. He never knew that Raven liked to eat chocolate. He had never heard of it. Raven nodded, chewing chocolate without stopping, and the rich aroma of chocolate emanated from her mouth as she spoke. The whole island is covered with a magic circle that amplifies the burning effect of a strong and bright flame, a magic circle that closes the space and seals it. Raven stepped on the soft grass and felt that the whole island was covered with a magic circle. Badi looked around and turned on the penetrating vision and found that he could not penetrate this area. The whole island was wrapped in a magic circle. The surrounding area was relatively quiet. There was a slightly salty sea breeze that slightly bent the wild grass on the grassland, and the night sky was clear, and he could see the bright stars, but he could not see anything. He could not see the veins of the magic circle, but he could feel a sense of repression, which was constantly suppressing his body's reaction. This made Badi like a tiger at all times. His body relaxed and tense, ready to attack at any time, ready to fight, and burst out with unparalleled power. Raven paused while chewing chocolate, and seeing Badi's face, as if facing a great enemy, she said, "Very weak." To her, this kind of magic circle was very weak. Even if it sealed most of the magic power, it was enough to deal with this kind of magic circle that only covered the island. Badi was silent and glanced at her expressionlessly, still keeping himself in the best fighting state. Whether facing a strong enemy or a weak enemy, he would always attack with all his strength and only feel at ease after killing the opponent first or being killed by the opponent. At this time, in the distance, a grey mist suddenly spread and gathered. A huge mist that occupied half of the sky formed the upper half of a person's body, which condensed quickly, and the outline of the appearance was clear. There was a bow tie on the neck, and the appearance could be clearly seen. This appearance made Badi's eyes flash coldly. It was Zatara, the great magician, Zatanna's father. Zatara's upper body formed by the mist looked down like a giant, with great power, occupying half the sky. The misty face was clear. His eyes looked at the world, and he looked down at Badi and Raven coldly. Demon, want to escape? Chapter 127. Fight if you want to. The mist giant was huge, like a god covering half the sky, towering in the sky, showing the upper body, looking down coldly at Badi and Raven. He regarded them as evil demons, disrupting the order of this world. The duty of a magician is to prevent demons from invading this world, quietly maintain the balance of this world, and protect mankind. Zatara is also a magician. Although he has all kinds of arrogant personalities, even fellow magicians don't like him, but he is still a magician, maintaining the order of the world, and driving the demons away from here. This is his duty, what he should do, and it cannot be resisted. In the wilderness, a gust of cold wind blew, bending the weeds on the ground, and waves of ripples swept across the plains under the clear starry sky. The hem of Badi's white windbreaker and Raven's black cloak was blown up, forming waves dancing, appearing silent and lonely, standing tall in the cold wind. The whole island was filled with deep malice, and a strong murderous intent rose up, surrounding Badi, making him feel a stinging pain in his body all the time. The threat brought by the reaction of magic energy was everywhere, in the sky, and on the ground. Badi stepped forward. His body was tall and proud, looking directly at the mist giant of Zatara, and the raised hem of his windbreaker created a fearless figure for him. He was like in the water, resisting resistance. He felt invisible obstacles with every step, and the sticky air was blocking him. It was all a reaction of magic. His figure moved forward with the wind, and the cold wind swept through his windbreaker, making a rustling sound. His back was fearless and majestic, lonely, and tenacious. Nothing could stop him from moving forward. He was in the wilderness, compared to the mist giant, like an ant. I'll deal with him. Raven quickly stuffed the chocolate into her mouth, puffed up her mouth and muttered vaguely. It was not very difficult for her to deal with Zatara, even though most of her power was sealed now. She knew that Badi's body had a particularly poor resistance to magic, and it was not an easy task to fight a magician. Eat your chocolate, Badi said in the cold wind, his voice cold and extra firm. The cold wind blew his hair. He squinted his eyes, looked at the mist giant of Zatara with a fierce look. His heart was like a drum, rumbling unwillingly, and the blood in his body began to burn. He took off his white windbreaker, took out 2 solar energy capsules from the windbreaker, threw them into his mouth, and held them. 1 solar energy capsule was enough to replenish Badi's current body energy. It was compressed by Hera's collection of solar energy in recent days. The energy contained in it was enough to be used as a small nuclear bomb. He threw his windbreaker back, and walked towards the mist giant. He was wearing a white shirt, white trousers, and white leather shoes. His figure was like a bright flame under the starry sky, burning with a crazy fighting will, and reflecting a majestic figure. The white windbreaker flew backwards, and was thrown by Badi, covering Raven's face. The white windbreaker covered half of her body, and the warm body temperature on the windbreaker was still transmitted to her face. She took the windbreaker off her face, put it on her arm, and looked at Badi's back, like a lone walker under the starry sky, lonely, but resolute, and determined to walk forward. He was like walking in a quagmire, determined and fearless, bravely walking towards the path he decided, cutting through thorns, and destroying everything with infinite will. He wanted to test himself. Raven suddenly knew why Badi went to face the battle. He was fearless and fearless, just wanted to know how much ability he had in the face of magic. Even if this was magic that had 200% damage to him. She looked at his back, gradually going away. In an instant, Badi changed from moving forward to running. The whole person under the starry sky instantly changed into a white shadow, rushing towards the mist giant. Adrenaline surged through his body again, stimulating all organs of his body to increase their intensity violently. Super hearing, supervision, heart beating wildly, and even the computing power of the brain, all running as if overloaded. His body burst out with a fiery breath. Sweat hair stood up. Every pore was stimulated and stung. Blue veins on his body protruded from his white jade skin, winding and bending like a dragon, extremely ferocious. Bang. In just a moment, he broke through the sound barrier here, and his clothes were torn and burned, hanging on his body, and burning a little bit, until they all dissipated. He was like a white train in the wilderness, bringing a white sonic boom cloud, rushing wildly. The white sonic barrier cloud gathered around him, and his white jade body aroused blue veins, presenting a sculpture-like figure under the starry sky. Under the moonlight, the muscle contours were beautiful and crazy, strong and terrifying, white and violent, shining under the starlight. Raven was completely stunned. Unexpectedly, in just a moment, Badi had already revealed a body as graceful as a sculpture, full of power and beauty. She didn't expect that Badi would be so violent. Then she quickly lowered her eyes, held her breath, and took out the chocolate from her cloak, forgetting to tear off the gold foil, and just chewed it. As she chewed and chewed, she lowered her eyes and unconsciously glanced at the white windbreaker wrapped around her forearm. She always felt that Badi's body temperature seemed to be transmitted from the windbreaker to her arm skin, making her a little uneasy. Fighting is fighting. Why do you want to explode your clothes? Raven lowered her head, biting and chewing chocolate, and didn't dare to look at Badi. At this time, the battle began. Badi was like a cheetah that broke the speed of sound. His strong figure ran wildly on the grassland, running towards the fog giant in the sky, bringing a hurricane along the way, raising white sound barrier clouds. The air of the entire grassland seemed to be cut by a sharp knife, forming air waves, tearing and surging in both directions. The mist giant obviously did not expect Badi to be so fierce, and he ran out of sonic boom. At this speed, if he ran into his body, as long as the magic force field shield was applied a little slower, it would be enough to kill him. Zatara knew that Badi's body was strong, but he did not expect him to be so violent and run out of sonic boom directly. This was too scary. The mist giant's cold pupils shrank as he looked down. He was in the air, half of his body stood in the sky, looking terrible, like a god. Badi was even more terrible. He was already crazy and violent, and his adrenaline surged to the point of frenzy. He faced the challenge of the god, naked and violent, running out of sonic boom, running towards him, which made people feel cold. It is unimaginable how fierce the battle will be when they meet. Zatara's mist formed a face, his pupils shrank, his face was grim, and a mighty voice came down from the sky, mighty and righteous. Servant of the devil. A huge hand formed of mist stretched out and slapped the running Badi like slapping a fly. The misty hand was over 20 meters long, with huge palm prints, simulated very carefully, gleaming with black light, breaking through the ripples of the airflow, like a hurricane of air pressure. It pressed down towards Badi. Chapter 128 Magic. The misty hand covered the sky and sun, pressing down, so majestic that it was suffocating, and the air was about to freeze. Badi suddenly moved like a cheetah, and his speed increased a little bit. When he was close to the top of his head, his body leaped, jumped in the air, rolled, and finally landed on his muddy soles. His toes grabbed the grass tightly, and slid for several meters. The toes that grabbed the ground also plowed 2 furrows on the grass. Bang! The earth-shaking shock shook the ground. This palm directly pressed down the ground in the palm range, leaving a palm mold that was 2 meters deep. The power should not be underestimated. The tearing air pressure erupted from the edge of the palm like a knife, and the wind tore it, and the mud splashed on Badi's body. His skin had some of the coolness and freshness of the mud, and the sharp coldness of the airflow. Badi gathered his strength, and made a tentative attack, raising his fist to hit the misty hand. The fist broke through the sound barrier with a bang and hit the side of the misty hand. However, the result made him stare. His fist actually penetrated the misty hand without any obstacles and entered inside, like hitting the air. Before, the misty hand still had physical properties, and could be pressed to form a palm mold, but now it no longer had physical properties, and was like an illusion. Badi narrowed his eyes and ignored it. This was probably also an application of magic, he didn't know. With another violent bang, his figure penetrated the white sonic boom cloud. The air was like cling film, and he was tyrannically penetrated. He ran wildly towards the bottom of the misty giant in the sky. The speed that exceeded the speed of sound was like a sharp knife cutting the airflow. There were turbulent hurricanes on both sides, surging behind him. The misty giant of Zatara snorted coldly, and the sound echoed in the clear starry sky. The misty hand was controlled by him, and some soil was pulled up. The misty giant clasped his hands together in the air. Instantly, the hands were no longer hands, but turned into mist and dark clouds, and then dispersed, forming countless wind blades emitting black light in the sky. The wind blades were densely packed, covering the face of the mist giant. There were so many, that they condensed and formed in the sky. Die. The mist giant glared, and the voice echoed in the sky. Countless wind blades bombarded Badi intensively. It was so dense, that it was impossible to avoid it. The whole sky was full of wind blades emitting black light and cold. Everywhere he looked was sharp and cold, and there was no way to dodge. Badi's eyes flashed with cold light, and he raised his arms and crossed them on his face, arms, and body. He bulged his hard muscles and welcomed this wave of bombardment with a minimum position. The wind blades really cut through Badi's abdomen like a blade cutting an ordinary person's body, cutting through the skin, the white fiber fat layer, and seeing the bright red muscles inside. There was bright red blood flowing out. The sense of threat made Badi's body extremely sensitive. This is a wind blade condensed by magic, which can really hurt his body, cut his body, and tear his body apart. Fortunately, his body is too strong after all, and each wind blade here is not strong. It can cut his body apart, not entirely because of its sharpness, but more because of the strange magic inside. Badi's body's magic resistance is too weak, and his body is torn apart by magic. The wind blades passed through his calves, thighs, arms, and abdomen coldly. He kept adjusting his position, and did not really withstand the frontal bombardment of a wind blade. Because when the wind blades were formed, when they were in the sky, Badi had already seen the interval between each wind blade, and calculated the distance of each one. When they bombarded down, the speed was exactly the same. Until now, when he was attacked by the wind blades, he still stared at the direction where the wind blades rushed forward, without blinking for a moment. The continuous wind blades were like the bombardment of aerial artillery, converging into a river. The river of wind blades was sharp and terrifying, enough to cut through any building of several hundred meters. The dirt kept splashing up, and the ground was full of potholes, as if it had been plowed. The dirt dust rose up and gradually spread. Raven couldn't help but feel a little worried. With so many wind blades, Badi's body had poor resistance to magic. If they were cut continuously at the same place, it would be enough to cut Badi's body into pieces. This was completely the rhythm of wanting to cut Badi into pieces. Only at the beginning, Badi could be seen holding his face with his hands crossed, his eyes flashing with cold light, to resist the wind blades, and the wind blades submerged him, and the dust and dirt rose very high. Boom 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 boom. The sound of wind blades tearing the air. This round of bombardment caused the entire large area to be filled with dust, and Badi was completely covered in it, and no figure could be seen with the naked eye. However, the wind blades still did not stop, bombarding and shooting towards the dusty inside, until all the wind blades were shot. The whole world was silent for a moment. The clear night sky was quiet and peaceful, and the earthen fields were filled with dust. The atmosphere was silent, as if filled with a suffocating air that made it impossible to breathe. The dust dissipated quickly and blew away behind him. A tall figure appeared, like a demon god walking out of the abyss and walking out of hell. He walked out of the dust, gradually walked out of the dark shadow, and his body was seen. His body was full of knife wounds, and his skin was cut open, some of which were deep enough to see the bones, and the veins were cut. The blood flowed all over his body, with as many as hundreds of wounds. The whole person was bathed in blood hell. His eyes were cold and piercing, and his tall figure exuded a dignified and terrifying aura, as brutal as a prehistoric beast, and his wildness seemed to be spreading and roaring, making the world silent. Badi withdrew his right hand, and blood beads flew from his fingertips, and danced in the wind. In just a moment, the cut skin, where the strong muscles could be seen, had healed, leaving only the cruel scars of blood all over his body, proving that he had been cut into pieces. Bang! This explosion was particularly loud in the wilderness. Badi seemed to have transformed into a bloodthirsty and brutal beast. His eyes were actually red, and the veins around his eyes were burned out. He tore the air. His eyes were red, cold and hot, bringing waves of heat to the sky. The pupils of the mist giant in the sky shrank, and he was horrified. Even though Badi's magic resistance was poor, this speed of recovery was really too shocking. Zatara even saw that the bone was deep in his arm, but it healed in an instant. What kind of flesh is this? The self-healing ability is too terrifying. His heart sank, and quickly, the mist giant quickly shrank, from covering half of the sky, to quickly shrinking underground little by little. Badi found the location of his body. He was in the forest, and the mist gradually shrank, and completely entered his body. Zatara, wearing a tuxedo for performance, sat in the center of the magic circle. He had no time to create a more powerful attack magic, so he could only release a magic force field shield for himself. Badi had arrived. In the forest, a pair of red eyes appeared. In the darkness, like the pupils of an evil monarch, the bright red eyes that appeared in hell at this moment. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129. This is impossible. In the dark forest, a blinding red light lit up. If the Kryptonians had any tricks to deal with magic, it would undoubtedly be pure energy bombardment, heat vision or freezing breath. Kryptonian cells have too strong a negative effect on magic, and can be easily torn apart and destroyed by magic. But this pure energy bombardment can be used to counter magic. Magic, after all, is also a kind of energy. It will not be reduced by the strong heat, impact, and reaction. Badi felt the direct effect of magic on his body, and he understood it at that moment. In the forest, panic and darkness spread. A pair of red eyes, like the brutal red light of a hungry wolf, shone from the darkness, making Zatara feel a little awe-inspiring. Then, two thick heat visions erupted from Badi's pupils, piercing through the air. The strong impact shook the surrounding air with tiny ripples, as if even the space could not bear it. Of course, this is actually just the effect of vibrating the air and causing the vibration of the space. The ripples look like they have penetrated and exploded even the space. Badi was as brutal as a wild beast, with extremely ferocious veins around his eyelids. The red heat vision was like the lava flames erupting from hell, starting from the ground. The hot heat vision burned all the weeds on the ground, and the ground was instantly charred, emitting a burnt sulfur smell, and crystals were formed along the way. The red light of the heat vision spread all the way to the ground, where Zatara's engraved magic circle was, and it blasted it hard. Badi did not use the heat vision to directly blast Zatara, but destroyed the magic circle he had set up, to avoid any secret means. In fact, this was the right choice. Two thick heat visions, red like a bath in hell, shot out, reflecting an evil red light in the dark forest, slashing through the charred black, producing broken crystals, leaving a track of burnt sulfur smell, and directly fighting against the engraved magic circle. The mysterious spells engraved on the ground, including runes of Atlantis, spells of ancient ancestors, ancient Egyptian spells, and ancient Indian divine patterns, gathered into a circle, forming a magic circle, and all the stars and the moon were worshipping Zatara. When the thermal vision was shot, all the mysterious spells suddenly lit up, and felt a squeeze of external energy. With a buzz, all the spells glowed, and a white protective shield rose up, trembling to resist. The thermal vision collided with the magic protective shield, and there was a loud explosion. The shock waves of the thermal vision violently sprayed out, pouring down like a desperate person. It was not an ordinary direct shooting, but a rhythm of slow and fast, which was finally adjusted by Badi. At the critical moment, Badi's eyes widened again, gathering all the energy in his body, and a more violent hot vision burst out from his pupils, and the temperature distorted the air. Zatara, including him, felt the hot temperature of the thermal vision transmitted inside, making his skin burn and his hair feel like it was about to be burned. His eyes were narrowed, cold and awe-inspiring. He had never thought that this demon servant would be so powerful. He pressed his hands on the ground, close to the wet ground, staring at Badi with narrowed eyes, and quickly chanted a mysterious spell, his body glowing with yellow light. Atash and atash atash and at. Hash atash. Inside the white magic circle, the mysterious runes underground trembled and vibrated, as if wailing under the thermal vision. One after another, the runes of Atlantis began to flicker and extinguish. The spells of the ancient ancestors extinguished. The ancient Egyptian spells extinguished. The ancient Indian divine runes extinguished. Bang bang bang. The magic circle could not bear the weight, and finally, with a huge explosion, the white shield was almost transparent, and was penetrated by Badi's thermal vision. At the same time, the white magic circle shield was no longer able to support it, and the explosion extinguished. The magic energy turned into fragments of white, like a little starlight, and was stirred and spread by the thermal vision. In front of Zatara, a thick earth wall quickly rose up. The thermal sight shot at the earth wall and instantly pierced a hole. Lava flowed down from the hole in the middle of the earth wall. Badi's thermal sight, which was launched with all his strength, could not be resisted by this earth wall. As soon as Zatara stopped chanting the spell, when the thermal sight passed through the earth wall, countless mud liquid spread from his feet to his body, covering his whole body. The thermal sight that passed through the earth wall directly bombarded Zatara. It seemed like forging. The scorching sight of the thermal sight did not burn Zatara into lava. The thermal sight kept bombarding, splashing sparks and flickering, but instead made the mud on the surface of Zatara's body crystallize, which was extremely crystal clear. But when the thermal sight touched the mud covering Zatara's body, Badi stopped the thermal sight immediately. Because the thermal sight could no longer hurt Zatara, but would be used mysteriously by him. The mud covering Zatara's body instantly blasted out the crystal clear part from the thermal vision, and spread out instantly. In an instant, the black mud became transparent, and Zatara was like being wrapped in diamond, crystal clear, and any hair movement of him could be seen inside, even the smear on his face. He put on a layer of armor for himself. The armor was transparent, angular, like the gorgeous armor of ancient British generals, beautiful and practical, and perfectly fit his body. Fight. You are still far away. Zatara sneered, his eyes arrogant and cold. He is the most outstanding person among this generation of magicians. Even the older generation is not as good as him, with the strength to look down on the magic world. How can he tolerate a demon servant being so arrogant in front of him, forcing him to take back the mist giant? This is an insult to the leader of this generation, the hero of the magic world. How can he tolerate the pride of him? Magicians are not ranged professions, and close combat is even more terrifying. Badi's eyes flashed red at the bottom. He retracted his thermal vision and bit off a solar energy capsule from his mouth. Thermal vision is the skill that consumes the most energy. He just used almost all his strength to attack, and directly shattered the magic force field shield. His body had no energy left. In addition, it was dark now, so it was not good for him to continue fighting. The solar energy capsule took effect quickly. Badi's body instantly felt the strong solar energy from his stomach infiltrating his slightly weak cells. The cells absorbed the effect of the capsule crazily. There was even a trace of solar energy overflowing from the surface of the body. The scorching reaction burned directly and distorted the air on his body surface, causing the space to be distorted by him, making him look like a god coming to the world, glowing and heating in the dark. His eyes were cold, and he didn't speak. He burned the air with terrifying power. At the moment Zatara spoke, Badi rushed forward with scorching eyes, broke through the air, and punched Zatara in the diamond armor. The violent fist directly blew up the air. Boom. The two of them created a terrifying explosion. A large white sonic boom cloud exploded and rolled far away. The weeds on the ground were pressed tightly against the ground. The nearby trees tilted, and the ones closer to them pulled up their tendons and flew away. The ones farther away also tilted, as if to avoid the two of them. The two of them flew backwards directly. After only more than 10 meters, they slightly bent their bodies, leaving 2 deep marks under their feet. They stopped their steps tyrannically, raised their heads, and looked at each other, and then violently attacked again. In the dark forest, fierce fists and feet clashed. Large areas of trees were uprooted or crushed into debris. The mud was plowed into countless cross marks and turned upside down. Zatara's diamond armor resisted half of the power of Badi's fist. This diamond armor was forged with magic and had a serious force reducing reaction to Badi's body cells. Once in contact, his cells would always be so weak that they would feel painful, as if they were torn apart. Zatara's fighting quality was undoubtedly excellent, but only excellent. In Krypton, there are so many geniuses, heroes, and heroes who are more outstanding than outstanding, but they were defeated by Badi. How could they be opponents of Badi in mere outstanding close combat? Amid the rumbling sound of the dark forest, Badi finally relied on his desperate combat awareness and combat literacy to strike the King Kong armor, and felt several important notes that make up the King Kong armor. Clear starry sky, bright moonlight. In the dark forest, there was a loud explosion, and a broken King Kong armor was hit into the sky. Under the faint starlight, there was a magnificent light, reflected in the bright moon. Badi's face was indifferent, and he jumped into the air. Against the backdrop of the bright moon, he had a tall and majestic body, naked in white jade, with his chest proudly standing upright, and his feet heavily stepped on the King Khan armor, like a god of war trampling on the world. This is impossible. Chapter 130 Hell. In the clear starry sky and bright moon, Badi stepped on the diamond armor, which radiated a magnificent brilliance under the soft moonlight. But all of this was trampled by Badi, which reflected Badi's ruthlessness and indifference, like a god of war looking at the world and ruthlessly trampling on the world. Zatara in the diamond armor looked unbelievable, staring with shock. He didn't expect that he would be suppressed so easily in close combat, and defeated so easily. Magicians can be far, close, strange, bright, dark, control element, control the mind, control space, and control plants. They are completely omnipotent. They are not like what others say, only mysterious and gloomy. That luck is completely unskilled. Magicians never have weaknesses. There are only weaknesses, but close combat has never been Zatara's weakness. On the contrary, it is still one of the strongest close combat enhancement magics among the top few. But the defeat was so clean that Zatara couldn't accept it for a while, and his self-esteem was frustrated. Although he was preparing magic in the diamond armor while fighting in close combat, it was too fast. The fighting quality of the demon servant in front of him was shocking. When Badi stepped on the diamond armor, even the moonlight in the starry sky seemed to set off his supreme and majestic figure. The diamond armor suddenly became brighter, piercing a strong white light under Badi's feet, as if he was determined to explode because he was not willing to be beaten by Badi. Badi looked like he was stepping on a small sun. At the moment when the diamond armor exploded, Zatara inside flashed and disappeared. Badi stepped on the diamond armor at the same time, using the force to cross the diamond armor. Boom! Badi fell from the sky from a height of 100 meters. The diamond armor behind him exploded with a raging flame like the sun. The fiery and hot temperature burned Badi's backskin. The temperature of the magic made Badi's back suddenly hot. Suddenly, Badi's back was like an ordinary person being scalded by boiling water, and it became red. This kind of pain was a small matter for Badi. With his recovery ability, he would recover immediately. He descended in the explosion, slightly bent his knees to relieve the force, stepped on the grass with his feet, sank into his toes, and then straightened his body again. The explosion exploded behind him, and above his head, creating a fireball as big as the moon, burning with a rumble. The light of the explosion shone from behind him on his broad back muscles, which were bright red. His front was resolutely covered by the shadow, covered by his own shadow. Under the shadow, his face was expressionless, his eyes were cold, and his chest was proudly high, standing upright. The explosion behind him created an atmosphere of invincibility for him, a naked body that stood up to the sky. He was like an invincible god of war walking out of the flames of war, with an expressionless face, cold eyes looking down on the world, and his iron-blooded chest bare and raised, fearless. Badi raised his head. In the clear night sky, Zatara was suspended in the sky, flying very high. He knew that Badi could jump up to hundreds of meters, because he was flying very high, so high that Badi could not jump. His face sank, looking down at Badi from the sky, but he felt nakedly despised in his heart. Badi looked up with cold eyes, without any other meaning, but Zatara felt as if he was mocking him, and mocking could only win in this way. He knew that there was something wrong with his mentality, and his pride made him have problems with his mentality. He quickly blocked these unfavorable negative emotions and calmed down. Magicians are famous for their varied means. It was because he was too strong and arrogant that he had to play close combat and was trampled on by others. Who could blame him? See the magician's means. Zatara said calmly in the sky. In his hand, a short stick magic wand appeared, and he waved it like a baton, elegant and decisive, like the most exciting song. It began. Instant. The whole island went crazy. There was an inexplicable wave radiating and radiating. The whole island was being shaped by magic, and this inexplicable wave began to reverberate back and forth. A wave of the soul. Badi felt as if he was in a quagmire. His body seemed to be dozens of times heavier. He felt uncomfortable and drowsy. This was a kind of mental discomfort that made people unable to avoid it. The whole island was reverberating with this wave. The soul, thoughts, and will suddenly became hundreds of pounds heavier, and they were about to crush him. At the same time, it seemed that there was a voice guiding and tempting him to fall asleep. Badi opened his eyes, bloodshot, veins on his body, hideous and terrifying. He even punched his heart hard and spat out a large mouthful of blood. He used the pain to stimulate himself, and forced himself to wake up, but it was very uncomfortable, and had no effect. The uncontrollable sleepiness seemed to surround his soul like this, and there was no way to refuse it. Mind magic. Raven paused while eating chocolate. She wanted to stop Zatara from performing mind magic, because from the beginning, she could see that Badi had a very painful past, and that past made him what he is now. But it was also because of that past that Badi had been torturing his heart and whipping himself to move forward. It was hard to say whether it was good or bad. But Raven did not stop him after all, because it was mind magic. In the upcoming method of fighting against Sangang, pulling Sangang into the mind world and letting Badi fight Sangang, it depends on how Badi's willies, whether he can hold up. If even Zatara's mind magic can't hold up now, then there is no need to fight Sangang. Just let him destroy the earth, because no one can stop it. She paused while eating chocolate with expectation in her eyes, and looked at Badi. And finally, Badi's eyes were wide open with bloodshot eyes. Very scary. There was no focus inside. He fell asleep, fell into the mind world, and was hit by mind magic. Even though he was trapped in the magic of the mind, his body was still straight, towering here, like a towering sky. His will was unyielding. His eyes were staring, ferocious and terrifying, extremely scary. In the forest, the trees seemed to be swaying like crazy, and thick dark green vines crawled out like giant snakes, and quickly came to Badi's feet, spreading and climbing up from his feet. The thorns of the vines were very sharp, scratching Badi's skin, pulling out blood threads along the skin, and piercing the blood vessels. The blood flowed down like a stream, soaking the black soil under his feet. Wary, only you treat me best. Wary, only you love me. Wary, let's get married. An uncontrollable impulse surged into his heart. In the boundless darkness of sinking, it was as if someone was talking to him, and he was also happy to like it, with indescribable palpitations. It was a kind of hormone in the body, a feeling of love. Badi said yes. The scene happened in an instant. This is a church, and the relatives of the groom and the bride are all here. Badi found that he was wearing a groom suit, with a calla lily on his chest, which represents holiness, piety, and eternal love. His eyes were a little confused, and he looked at the envious, congratulating, and contemptuous eyes of the people present, and his mind was a little confused. The whole space was a little confused white, a dreamlike scene, until a beautiful woman with a pretty face, wearing a white, holy wedding dress appeared. His eyes were bright, happy, and relieved. This space seemed to be brighter, and rippling with light. The bride came to Badi with her father's hand. The father's face was unconcealed, contemptuous, and he put the bride's hand in Badi's hand, snorted coldly, and said, "From today on, you have to treat Ying like a princess, otherwise, I will not let you go." Badi had forgotten this joyful mood, and it had been a long time since he had felt excited. He smiled, and his smile was sunny and flawless. "I'll show you how I treat Ying now." Badi smiled, put his hands on the bride's shoulders, inserted his fingers into her shoulders, and made blood holes. The blood flowed and dyed the wedding dress red. His smile never stopped. The bride's beautiful face showed pain and panic. "Wary, what are you doing?" Tear. Blood rain fell instantly. The bride was torn in half. The whole church was stained with blood. Badi's pupils suddenly had focus. He did not follow the plot, did not get married as before, but tore Ying directly. The pain of the vine tearing surged into his head. When the vine climbed up his face, and was about to pierce his pupils with sharp tentacles, his pupils lit up with a blood red light, and the momentum crawled out like hell, terrifying, bloody and terrifying. He experienced hell again. Chapter 131 The battle with the magician ends. This was too fast. Badi was just trapped in the spiritual world, and he broke out in 2 or 3 seconds. He accepted the arrangement of the spiritual magic, but the ending was determined by him from the beginning. Once it started, it ended. Whoever falls into the spell of spiritual magic will be led to the many fears, pains, love, happiness, etc. in the mind. A reincarnation will be created, guiding and attracting the will of the mind, getting deeper and deeper, making it impossible for people to simply escape the guidance of spiritual magic. In the world, created by spiritual magic, those who are happy will indulge in happiness as usual. Those who are afraid will tremble in fear. Those who are in pain will wail in pain. Those who are in love will be entangled with their lovers. Once they are caught, no living being can easily get rid of this spiritual guidance control. Even fear and pain will not be so easy to break free. The human mind also has a self-abuse mind, and the little painful pleasure obtained from self-abuse, fear and painful wailing will be magnified by the spiritual world. The person will unconsciously feel fear and pain, reincarnate in it, and wail with pleasure. Badi was beyond his expectation. Even Zatara and Raven didn't know what Badi had experienced in the world created by mind magic, and why it ended in just 2 seconds. Zatara felt that there was no problem with his mind magic. Badi was indeed sinking at that moment, at the mercy of others, but it was over in 2 seconds. It was too fast. There was no precedent. It seemed that in that instant, Badi had experienced all the happiness, all the fear, all the pain, all the love, all the most intense emotions, and after experiencing all of this, his will seemed to be polished as hard as a rock, tearing the world of the mind apart, and returning to reality. His will seemed to turn into light, and his eyes shot out through the skull eyes. It was like the most intense emotions honed in hell, and he experienced everything in an instant. This man is worthy of fear. Zatara was in the sky, looking down, and his forced calm face was also moved. Badi gave him too much shock. If will can be manifested, ordinary people are lambs, magicians like him are tall buildings, and Badi is the sun, the stars, or even as creepy as a black hole. Raven's eyes flickered slightly, with a little surprise. She didn't know what Badi had experienced, but with such a strong will, it was enough to support Sangang's attack. In the spiritual world, Badi would be at home. Sangang's attack power was greatly reduced, and maybe he could seal Sangang's projection. She nodded slightly, and lowered her head to continue eating chocolate. If nothing unexpected happened, this Kryptonian warrior vs magician should be over. The result is beyond doubt. The magician has already flown into the sky, and started to use long-range magic attacks. Badi can only become a target. The result is just as Raven expected. In front of Badi, who can't fly yet, plus the magic that still restrains the body of Kryptonians, the magician's power of remotely controlling various elemental magics is revealed. On the grassland, sharp earth spikes with a black glow suddenly appeared. They followed Badi's dodging steps. In the forest, a tree suddenly stood up, and turned into a tree man, using branches as hands to delay Badi's actions. Vines swirled in the dark night, like thousands of snakes running, chasing Badi, which was extremely scary. At the same time, there were meteorites with tails and flames above, smashing the island into large flaming pits, and rubble splashed everywhere. In an instant, it was like the end of the world. Badi could rely on his extraordinary combat experience and combat awareness, use thermal vision to shoot, and use powerful force to blow up the tree man, more or less dodging. But when it started to rain, the rain turned into ice, and the ice condensed into needles, covering every inch of the place, and it was impossible to dodge. Of course, this kind of range magic did not cause much damage to Badi, but even if it was not big, it pierced him like a hedgehog, and blood flowed. But even so, Badi still stood in the ruins of a wilderness. The flames of meteors and meteorites burned on the ground, and ice needles were inserted vertically into the broken and uneven gravel ground. He was tall, and seemed to rise from the ground. In the world of fire and cold, he held his chest high and was fearless. His body shook, flew away, and broke the ice needles. The mist surrounded his body. In the haze, a powerful and terrifying body stood. He still had no expression on his face, and looked up at Zatara with cold eyes, waiting for him to perform any magic tricks. For him, this was a good opportunity to collect the magician's fighting methods, to attract more magician's methods as much as possible, so that he could be more familiar with the damage of magic and the magic moves. Next time, with preparation, victory will be expected. Zatara frowned. It was too difficult to deal with Badi. Badi's fighting awareness was too good and his recovery ability was too strong. Powerful single target magic. Obviously Badi also knew there was danger, always relying on his combat experience and awareness, always avoiding it one step ahead. Even if he couldn't avoid it, it was just a side attack, and the damage was not even as good as the range magic. Just like the meteorite magic just now, it was actually very powerful, and the magic energy contained was enough to give Badi a sense of threat of death. But in the air, Badi instantly calculated the point where the meteorite fell directly, and the physical inertia, kinetic energy, friction, and flames and even some weird magic energy reactions brought by it were understood by Badi. He even dodged it in advance. This made Zatara embarrassed for a while. He just condensed the meteorite, and Badi had already moved to a good position. No matter how you hit it, you can't hit it. It's really infuriating to fight. Even if he used magic to control the meteorite to tilt a little, Badi immediately noticed it. He adjusted the position again, and hit it again. There was no way. This kind of battlefield information collection, calculation, and superb combat awareness, even if Zatara has the advantage, there is no good way to deal with it. After all, he flew too high, and the trajectory of the magic was too obvious. But it was too low, and if Badi jumped up and stepped on him again, it would be even worse. So, he frowned and cast another magic to control the 5 senses, but it was obvious that Badi's senses were too strong, too easy to control, and too easy to break free, because his consciousness was too strong. He was simply a war machine. Zatara continuously cast magic to control the 5 senses, and then added an illusion magic cage, causing all kinds of strange illusions to appear in front of Badi's eyes. For example, there was a raven in front of him, treating him to chocolate. For example, there were hundreds of thousands of people kneeling in front of him at the same time, kneeling, surrendering, and believing in him. For example, there was an extremely beautiful woman without clothes on a bed. For example, Badi had already stepped on the starry sky and pinched the stars like playing with marbles. Illusions came one after another, extremely fast. In the end, they appeared in an instant. Don't be surprised that Badi just stared at them and was annihilated. Of course, Badi didn't know magic, but in terms of will, illusions couldn't control him. He could break free from the annihilation by concentrating his mind. Some of the mirages couldn't be eliminated by themselves, but they couldn't hurt him either. His keen combat awareness could sense these false things and avoid real attacks. In the end, Zatara used his killer move, taking advantage of the moment when Badi's 5 senses were controlled and confused by the illusion. In the sealed space that had already been arranged on the island, the space turned into a dark vortex mouth, swallowing Badi in one bite. Seal Badi in the space. When Badi quickly broke free from the control of his 5 senses and the influence of the illusion magic, he was already in a dark and empty space. He was sealed. It was so weird that he could be considered to have lost to the magician. This mysterious magician. He actually felt that he could still fight and see more of the magician's methods because he still had a capsule in his mouth, which was enough to watch Zatara perform magic for a long time. It was not until 1 minute and 30 seconds later that Badi knew the time clearly when his eyes suddenly lit up and he saw the stars in the clear sky again. Zatara was already standing aside in ragged clothes. His face was pale and his pupils were dazed. Later, it was heard that his battle with Raven lasted for 2 seconds. Chapter 132 at 1800 hours will be posted later. Because of power outage. Chapter 133 Throwing away a life. In the morning, it was already the next morning. The whole city was like a person gradually getting up lazily from the bed after a night's rest, and starting to radiate heat and flow all over the body. This is Manhattan, the presidential suite on the top floor of the Four Seasons Hotel. Badi never skimps on his enjoyment, and he should enjoy what he has. The breeze was cool, penetrating the curtains, and the golden curtains with gauze were slightly lifted up, fluttering in the air, like elves jumping in joy, and flying flexibly for the morning light of a beautiful day. There were butterfly flowers on the windowsill, exuding a faint fragrance, and the purple, white, and yellow petals were shining in the morning dew. The sunlight refracted through the morning dew beads, exuding a dazzling brilliance, with warmth and cool air touching the skin. On the dining table, the sun poured in, full of warmth, and on it were foods that did not look like breakfast. Various seafood feasts, Australian king crabs, Australian lobsters, Hokkaido red crabs, Australian abalone, Alaskan king crabs, French melon oysters, Alaskan long-legged crabs, all kinds of expensive seafood in the world, famous cooking methods, various cooking methods, steamed, fried, baked with cheese, soup, sashimi. This morning is the morning of seafood. The room is full of seafood delicacies, blowing away the early flower fragrance outside the windowsill. Raven is wearing a cloak, and the hood of the cloak is pulled down to her back, revealing some fluffy black hair, parted in the middle. Under the sunlight, there is a translucent and crystal skin under the pale skin. Her eyelashes are very long, her eyes are black and focused, and she looks a little dull. Her lips are dark purple. Overall, she looks a bit like a stay-at-home girl who has stayed at home for a long time and never went out. She eats seafood feast silently and quietly. Badi was still wearing white clothes, a white suit underneath, a tailor-made elegant white windbreaker with gold lining. Under the slanting sunlight, his face slightly absorbed the light, and the halo was shining. If he hadn't had a blank expression on his face, if he hadn't piled up the shells of various seafood next to the table, if his hands hadn't stopped moving, then with his appearance, his sculpture-like firm face reflecting the halo, it would have been a beautiful painting that would have amazed the world. Badi and Raven sat a little closer. Both of them looked calm and composed, eating in a low voice, looking very elegant, calm, and well matched. Inexplicably, Raven, who was silent, and Badi, who was also calmly eating a seafood feast, had an inexplicable harmony and matching atmosphere. Under the slightly warm sunlight, the two, one white and one black, looked unusually harmonious, like a scene in a painting. Even Raven couldn't describe this feeling. She always felt harmonious, comfortable, and delicious, a feeling she had never had before, which made her feel very comfortable. Raven had no objection to eating seafood in the morning. On the contrary, she was somewhat curious and pleased because she had never eaten these earth foods. She ate calmly, biting the long crab legs of the king crab with her teeth from time to time, biting out the white crab meat, and sucking it into her dark purple lips without making a sound. As for how to eat these shellfish, she learned from Badi, silently learning and eating silently, watching how Badi ate, and then she took the same food and learned to eat. The two of them were speechless, but they had a tacit understanding. There was actually a feeling of teaching a daughter. Badi simply felt absurd. This inexplicable atmosphere was really indescribably comfortable. Could he be a *** too? He broke a large crab claw, gently bit the shell, ate the sweet claw meat, and ate while thinking. Zatara, who was opposite them, was not so calm and composed. Zatara no longer had that cultivated and aristocratic demeanor. Although he was wearing an elegant tuxedo, he did not show any cultivation. Instead, he looked like a destitute nobleman whose family was in ruins. His face was really haggard. His fragile spirit after not sleeping for a night, his messy hair, and the bloodshot whites in his pupils all made him feel uneasy, and even a little angry. Just now, my father passed me a message. They detected the fate of the future. Soon, there will be a great disaster in the magic world and even the entire earth. Perhaps, the magic world will be destroyed from now on, and even the earth will be destroyed. Zatara's voice was hoarse, and his eyes were wide open, with bloodshot and hideous protrusions. He was obviously in disbelief, but combined with what he knew last night, he couldn't imagine that this was the reason. It was not only his own death, but also the death of the entire magic world and even the earth. A demon that can easily destroy the planet is about to come to the earth, and there is only 1 week left. This made him particularly anxious and impatient, especially when he saw the most important person, Badi, and the most important half-demon Raven, eating seafood leisurely there. He wanted to slap him into a crab claw and clamp the two guys to death. Eat, 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 eat. The world is about to be destroyed in a week, and a demon that can destroy the stars has arrived. All you know is to eat, 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 eat. He saw Badi and Raven eating a seafood feast, and he couldn't help but feel extremely angry. His eyes were full of flames, and he was furious. Just last night, he was solved by Raven in 2 seconds. pulled down from the sky, and then hit by Raven's transmission magic, which transmitted to him the information that Sangang tracked the location of the Earth and was coming to the Earth to destroy the Earth. Zatara can still distinguish the authenticity of this transmission magic. Then he was stunned for 1 minute and 28 seconds and still couldn't believe it. Only then did he realize that he had made a big mistake. But at the same time, he was deeply suspicious and questioned. He couldn't believe that such a powerful demon could come. This is a joke. In the morning, he received a message from his father. In the process of exploring his fate, his father unexpectedly learned that the magic world, the Earth, and even his life was not long. For some reason, he didn't know, the existence that was too powerful prevented them from peeking into their fate. More than a dozen veteran magicians have cast destiny spells together, intending to find out the future, but they were backfired and died without any valuable information. Now the British Magicians Association and the magic world are all on the move, preparing for the coming storm. The future seems extremely dangerous, as if there is a powerful existence that makes people afraid, suffocated, uneasy, and wants to destroy everything. The calm, noisy, and vibrant city is always in danger of destruction. And now, these two people are eating a seafood meal. It's morning. It's not suitable for eating seafood at all! Exclamation mark. Zatara stared with bloodshot eyes in anger, gnashed his teeth, and slapped the table hard with his hand. With a snap, he rudely slapped the seafood meal on the table and made it jump up. Some shells next to Badi and Raven rolled down from the pile of shells. He glared angrily and roared impatiently, "It's almost the end of the world, and you are still eating seafood." Raven's dark purple lips paused for a moment, and he responded blankly, "In a week, we won't be able to eat it anymore. In a week, they might fail and die at the hands of Sangang. So what's wrong with eating a different meal now?" In this regard, she agreed with Badi. Because Badi arranged different breakfasts, lunches, and dinners for the next week, all kinds of expensive world-class beef, seafood, desserts, chocolates, and fruits, so that she and Badi could enjoy a feast. Because they didn't know whether they would live or die, they had to live every day as if it was their last day and eat all the rare delicacies in the world. Zatara was so anxious that he was like an ant on a hot pot. His heart was so irritable that he had to use magic to calm himself down. He calmed down with a breath and said sternly with a serious face, "What we should do now is how to deal with the demons that want to destroy the Earth. It concerns the magic world and the entire human world not enjoying the last meal." Badi's indifferent expression changed to seriousness. He took the napkin and wet his lips. He said sternly, "I already have a plan, but I still need the magic of your magic world, the analysis of the principles of magic, the operation of magic, data, and even a series of methods to learn magic and divine arts. I need to thoroughly understand magic, mind magic, and all magic to increase my confidence in dealing with Sangang." These words, Badi even had an ill intention to obtain magic. Because magic is too mysterious, invisible, and unknowable. If he can obtain magic and conduct research through this in the future, if he still has a life to deal with Sangang, then magic will not be his fatal weakness. And at this time, it seems to be a very just and normal thing to bring it up. Zatara's impatience gave him an opportunity to learn about magic. He originally planned to start with Raven, but now he was still trying to win Raven's favor, so he couldn't get magic so quickly. Even if Raven helped him without knowing it, and knew that he was going to kill a baby, she would probably fall out with Badi directly, so Badi didn't have a good chance to get magic. Any opportunity, for someone who is prepared like Badi, cannot be missed. Zatara's face was moved. Badi looked very serious and stern. This matter concerns the entire Earth, and it really can't be sloppy. He was indeed a little impatient and unstable in his heart. In the images transmitted by Raven, he learned that the power of the three palaces could destroy stars that are larger than the Earth, and magic planets that are more outstanding than the magic world of the Earth. It is an existence that the entire magic world cannot resist. This big demon, the magic world combined, is not an opponent. This is a demon that only gods are qualified to fight. And magicians are always human, not gods, and it is difficult to compete. Don't think that the Teen Titans style defeat of Sangan in the comics will happen in reality. That's impossible. It is precisely because he knows the gap that Zatara became impatient. Even with his strength as a leader in the magic world, he couldn't help but feel irritated. Sangan, a demon that can destroy stars, makes it difficult for people to face it calmly. Hearing what Badi said, he didn't hesitate at all. It can even be said that Badi and Raven's preparation to fight Sangan alone was highly recognized by him. This is for the magic world, for the earth, and for those who are ready to fight and sacrifice their lives to protect the earth. To understand magic, facing Sangan increases the chances of winning. This is normal. He didn't expect that Badi was just for himself. If Zatara is willing to give it, it would be very good. He also wants to obtain some of the operation methods and principles of magic, so that he can develop equipment to block magic when he encounters a magician in the future, or develop magic himself to immunize his Kryptonian physique against the weakness of magic. If not, that's fine. After all, the profession of magician is like a profession that keeps its heritage secret, making people feel that they can't learn magic even after all the hardships. He won't ask for it. But if he still has his life after dealing with the three palaces, he will try his best to obtain the knowledge of magic, so as not to be at a disadvantage in the face of magic in the future. I will sort out and collect a lot of magic in the magic world within a day and pass it on to you. Even the secret techniques passed down in my family and the spells of meditation to enhance the spirit can be shown to you and explained to you. Zatara's eyes were like torches, and his words were decisive and resolute. For the sake of the earth, he did not follow the traditional and ancient rules. Badi's eyes showed a firm look, unquestionable determination and firmness. This time, it is indeed the best time. The knowledge about magic is so easy to get, Zatara said decisively, and hesitated for a while. It's just only 1 week. What can be studied? The time is really too short. Zatara became a magician with the strongest power in the magic world. He had to practice from childhood to adulthood for 28 years. With his excellent talent and strong magic blood, he could understand, use and master so many magics. But Badi had not even practiced magic. Could he understand, or even crack it? Of course, there was no need to think about using it. Badi did not have the blood of a magician, so it would be useless. Yes, my IQ and brain computing speed are beyond your imagination. Badi's words were powerful and decisive, and he said without any doubt, besides, I only understand and know clearly, but I don't have the ability to use it. But in the spiritual world, the more I understand the changes of magic, the more I can control my spiritual world, and the more I can resist the destruction of the three palaces. Now I have changed too little, and know too little about magic. Zatara nodded firmly and agreed. In the battle between him and Badi, Badi was fighting in close combat. Only the heat vision could be considered a little threatening. This was simply a reckless fight. Although Badi's fighting consciousness was better than he expected, it would be difficult for him to face a magician with that kind of fighting style. Unless the magician was arrogant and wanted to fight him head on, Badi would have no chance. You are right, I will go to collect it for you now. Zatara acted decisively, nodded to Badi with a firm look in his eyes, and then stood up and left the table. With a haggard face and a little confidence, he walked out of the door of the presidential suite. In order to enable Badi to fight against Sangan and save the earth, he was willing to do his best to assist Badi. Badi watched Zatara's back disappear. His eyes were firm, without any fluctuations. He was not happy about it either, because all this requires him to fight Sangan with his life. If he survives, he will naturally have everything, a bright future of hegemony. If he doesn't survive, nothing can be discussed. Raven stood aside, looking at the profile of Badi. Under the shining of his eyes, there was a slight halo. His tough face seemed to have a kind of perseverance and unyielding, saving the world from danger and shouldering the responsibility of the safety of the whole world. He had a heroic heart that took on the responsibility of the whole world. She felt that at this moment, under Badi's resolute outline, the heart to save the world was trustworthy. She nodded silently and said, I will also teach you magic, and try to master more changes, and deal with the three palaces in the spiritual world. Badi snorted deeply in response. He had no expression on his face and did not feel the joy of gaining. No one knew. He did not want to save the earth, but just wanted to survive and grow up, to be a king who could play with the existence of the stars, control everything, and dominate everything. Because of the power outage, a chapter at 1800 hours. Chapter 134 Understanding. The next morning, the sun was still shining, warm, but the air was chilly. Winter had already arrived, and the people of Manhattan began to wrap themselves up tightly, wearing down jackets, exhaling cold mist from their mouths, huddling their arms against their bodies, shivering from the cold, and carrying out their unchanging daily routines. Perhaps a few people changed at the moment, but most of them continued on the old path, just like that, living, not knowing, fortunately or unfortunately. Those who knew less might be happier. Of course, Badi didn't think so. Ignorance is a sin. Even when danger came, one's own life could not be controlled. Ignorance that could not be resisted. There was no happiness at all. Zatara brought a large amount of magic that he had collected, including ancient notes, scrolls, gems, dead bones with magical aura, dead wood, noble swords inlaid with gems, dazzling spells, witch scripts, prayer scripts, runes, and magic arrays recorded in more than 120 languages of different races. Zatara used magic to form a greyhound from the expensive sofa and glass coffee table in the living room of the presidential suite, and swept them all to one corner. Then, with a wave of his hand, a mountain of various strange things, even a noble sword with gemstones on the top, slowly fell on the soft carpet. But this is not all. It is just to let Badi understand the principle of magic first. If he can't understand it, there is no need to take out other in-depth ones later. In the presidential suite, all the windows are open, and the light illuminates the high-rise suite brightly and broadly. Badi stood at the window, where the sun shone the warmest. His figure was lonely and majestic. It was not an exaggeration to say that the entire magic world and the life of the earth depended on him. His eyes radiated light in the sun, and he took out a solar energy capsule from the pocket of his windbreaker and opened his mouth to bite it. He converted the solar energy absorbed by his body cells into energy belonging to his body and controlled and guided it all to flow into his brain, strengthening his brain. Badi instantly felt his brain was swollen, as if his head was a little bigger, and then like a dam lacking floodwater, the crazy brain synapses were flashing and shocking, flashing countless thoughts. The whole world was buzzing, as if it had escaped into another clear and lucid realm. The composition of the air, the movement of dust, the warm sunlight, the molecules seemed to be rotating, and Badi had a clear insight. This moment seemed to be full of the operation of the world and the truth of the universe, like an ant scratching the heart, like a black hole, which made people unable to help but attract. This was knowledge, a large number of distracting thoughts, the result of a flash in the brain, and even a slight cold breeze. Badi could calculate in an instant how many dust particles in the presidential suite were blown, and then the trajectory, where they would fly, and what the result would be, all calculated in Badi's brain. The brain's thinking was unprecedentedly violent and crazy, and it exceeded 1 billion operations in an instant. Superman used to be able to read all the medical skills in the world in 5 minutes, and learned the medical skills that ordinary people could learn in 10 years. Now, Badi can do it too. Although his genes have defects, he is smart and not inferior to Kryptonians with perfect genes. He has even broken the limitations of genes and achieved achievements beyond the imagination of ordinary Kryptonians. In addition, after basking in the sun, his brain cells have been further strengthened, and the flashing thoughts of the brain synapses are particularly intense. Badi eased the swelling of his brain and kept his brain in an extremely efficient operation, using the energy of his body to maintain it. His eyes seemed to flash with sparks of wisdom, and he said, "Let's start." Zatara nodded. The most fundamental use of magic comes from mental power. Using the physical body as an analogy, mental power is like a person's hands and feet, which can move and cast magic. The heart and brain are the soul, the innermost core. The existence of magic blood is to fit a certain aspect of magic, which makes it easy for mental power to be used more efficiently. Zatara did not say it mysteriously, and even used it as a simple metaphor to say what is needed for magic casting, all the basic needs and information related to magic blood. The sun poured down on Bati's serious and resolute face, emitting a halo. He listened silently, absorbed, and formed his own understanding of magic in his brain. In his understanding, magic is also a science, a unique science about spirit and soul, combining nature, the universe, and the mind. Badi certainly cannot use it, and cannot cast magic, but he has integrated his own knowledge, and come up with his own understanding of the basic structure of this magic. Magic has opened a veil to him. With Zatara's explanation, Badi gradually understood the basic structure of magic. The most basic structure is actually no different from science. The same rules of force on force, the fluctuations between particles, the frequency of spells, the size of infrasound waves, the runes and spells of magic circles, in Bati's eyes, are all like the circuits of electronic boards, but this is not just about powering on, but about connecting the spirit and soul, and activating the magic bloodline. Therefore, this makes magic mysterious and difficult to predict. The fluctuations of the spirit are too changeable and polymorphic to be detected scientifically. The spirit and soul of a person have been inherited and accumulated from the mother's placenta since ancient times. When they are born, they combine a lot of information from heaven and earth, which is contained in their blood. As they grow up, it becomes clear that this is a variety of magical blood. Some are good at controlling element, some are good at controlling plants and animals, and some are good at controlling the mind. There are many different kinds. When Badi heard this, he suddenly thought unconsciously that the life forms created on Krypton were all created. They did not pass through the placenta from the previous mother's body, and did not pass through the kind of genetic information from heaven and earth, the kind of information passed down from ancient times, and transmitted from the mother's body. Although Kryptonians are powerful, their minds are an invisible weakness that is easy to be controlled by magic. In fact, there is this reason. The genes they modulate grow rigidly, and may be powerful, but their minds and souls have not experienced the innate information that is passed down, the kind of information that a biological race passes through the spirit, soul, and the placenta in the mother's belly. So, is the mind of Kryptonians a weakness? Badi thought silently. That's why he could use the soul of a time traveler to break the limitation of Kryptonian genes, because the genetic people modulated by Krypton might be in the process of growth. First the genes dominate the physical reaction, and then gradually the consciousness and soul are formed in the future. Badi had some guesses, but in the end he was not sure, because he was still in the initial stage of understanding magic. Chapter 135. Magic System, Technology System, Kryptonian Gene Chain, and Mental Power. At night, it was already dark. From the high floor of the Four Seasons Hotel, in the presidential suite, you could still see the bustling night scene of Manhattan and the brightly lit scenery. Zatara came out of the presidential suite with disbelief and doubt on his face, and his eyes slightly frowned with confusion. He explained to Badi the basic principles of magic, the composition of witchcraft, and the effectiveness of spells. There is no doubt that Badi's intelligence, the degree of accepting new things, the speed of absorbing new things, and using them for his own benefit shocked him, but at the same time, it also gave him another feeling about the existence of magic. Because Badi's questions were difficult for him to answer. It was difficult to answer, but there was nothing wrong with that, because magic was originally mysterious and full of unreasonable flavors. He had always believed this, since he was a child. But Badi combined his knowledge, and wanted to explore every inch of particles, and every amplitude of every grain from a scientific and rigorous perspective. Every question he asked was well-founded and reasonable. Badi asked all kinds of questions. Can the circuit for writing spells be guided by mental power, and replaced with electricity? Regarding the friction between mental power and the outside world, how much force is generated on oneself? From the perspective of dynamics, is the driving force of magic mental power? The essence of mental power is the outward form of particles in the soul. Is it amplitude or particle? Is the difference between wave-like mental power and particle mental power just the casting speed? Without the resonance of magic blood, how long can pure mental power exist violently with the atmosphere? Is mental power also a kind of energy particle? From a genetic point of view, the existence of magic blood represents the inheritance of information. Have you tried to detect magic from a scientific perspective? Have you extracted the information gene of your own magic blood? Badi's questions caused Zatara's cognition of magic to become confused. Magic is magic. It is mysterious, full of weird magic. No one has ever been able to truly understand magic, because magic is a very mysterious existence. Magic is mysterious. Why do you use science to explain it? But why do you say so much? Even he himself feels that it might be right. The lineage of magic inheritance is extremely mysterious and unsolvable, but obviously, in Badi's eyes, there is nothing unsolvable. He combined his own views and gave Zatara a considerable impact on his 3 views. According to Badi, magic is not only about application, but also about understanding the root. For a long time, these magicians have followed the spells left by their predecessors and rarely changed them. Even if there are innovative changes, they are just changes that are superfluous from the root, because this is already a fixed pattern, just like the tone set by the entire universe, and according to the original tone, magic develops from it. Badi's words are like a bomb, exploding in Zatara's heart. He proposed a new tone of magic. Magic is just another kind of science, and there are many magics that Zatara can't even explain the principles. He just uses them according to the frequencies, spells, and magic circles that have been passed down, and doesn't know why he must do so in order to have such an effect. I just know that if I use it wrongly, my mental power may backfire, causing me to feel uncomfortable or even die. This is just like burning a circuit board, which makes Badi feel less mysterious and weird about the mystery of magic. They use it too simply, without any innovation or creativity, just maintaining the mysterious knowledge of magic of their predecessors. They make magic too mysterious. Just like a magic to summon a hero, Badi understands that in the world, the existence of soul consciousness information is imprinted in the complex information space of the planet. When there is a frequency match, it is enough to extract the will of the hero and impose it on oneself, and obtain the memory, will, and some pictures left by the original hero. This is so damn right. Zatara deeply agrees, but he is confused. He is not familiar with scientific knowledge, and there is always a little awkwardness. He can't be angry with Badi. This is not completely to uncover the mystery of magic, but just to look at it from another angle. Zatara's spiritual worldview has been shocked. Magic is like a sexy beauty wearing beautiful clothes. Once she takes off her clothes, she is discovered by Badi to have the same physical properties: electromagnetic reaction, emission properties, genetic information, dynamics, fluid mechanics, elemental particles, informatics, quantum mechanics, etc. can all be found in it to help Badi solve his puzzles. Magic is no longer mysterious in his eyes. Just some basic knowledge of magic, the cognition of mental power and soul, and the knowledge of various spells have benefited Badi a lot. Magic can be found in science, but it is another kind of science, different from the old knowledge system that Badi knows. It is another system of understanding the world. This system can be called idealism system, or soul system. See the world in the universe with individuals. In the next week, Zatara continued to provide more and more kinds of magic. From the beginning, when he explained magic to Badi, he was often confused by the questions Badi asked him using scientific knowledge combined with magic, and he couldn't even answer them himself. In the end, he was already discussing with Badi about the release, amplitude, and effect of magic, and even had a bit of a humble attitude to ask for advice. Badi became a theoretical magic master in just a few days. Except for not being able to release magic, his theory was very solid. Of course, due to his own scientific knowledge, he seemed to be well-founded and extremely professional. He was able to grasp both magic and science. This was a completely unique existence in the magic world. In these few days, Badi received not only Zatara's magic knowledge, which could be regarded as a foundation. More importantly, Raven's magic knowledge was transmitted into his head. Raven came from a destroyed magic planet, an orthodox prosperous magic planet, which was much more powerful than the magic world on Earth. Everyone there was a magician and everyone knew magic. Magic was equivalent to the technology on Earth, and was a very common thing. Therefore, Badi also obtained more abundant, detailed, and exhaustive magical knowledge. This gave Badi an incomparable and profound knowledge of magic. Even on the last day, he could clearly understand Zatara's strength. He could also understand from some clues about magic which kinds of magic Zatara had practiced and which kinds of magic he was good at. Even if the current Badi fought with Zatara at that time on the island, he could instantly know how the diamond armor operated, the speed and frequency of Zatara's chanting, and the operating rules of Zatara's magic circle. If it were the current self, Zatara at that time would have no way to escape from him within 10 steps, and it would be impossible for him to go up to the sky to cast magic. Magic system. This is undoubtedly a good growth for Badi's strength. From another perspective, the perspective of magic, he sees himself. Looking at himself from the perspective of magic, Badi discovered that his Kryptonian body is a typical magic waste. The powerful genes of the flesh, the gene chain of the flesh, that is extremely powerful, connects the external effect of his mental power. His pure mental power was integrated into the gene chain and combined to produce a cell force field. The so-called flight, using the force field, is actually the mental power acting in the cells to control the force field to fly. In other words, Badi's soul, will, and mental power are undoubtedly powerful, but because of the body's cell force field, the mental power cannot be purely released, and there is no way to really use mental magic. This is actually equivalent to another kind of magic bloodline, a physical magic bloodline with very poor resistance to magic. A completely useless magic bloodline. This did not make Badi feel regretful, but Badi felt relieved. He understood the reason for his weakness, which proved that he could modify this defect in the future and become a perfect god. But now, he can't. Because, time. There is no time. There is no time for him to fix these defects. The time to face the 3 palaces has come. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136 Concentration. The last day. Still in Manhattan, Four Seasons Hotel. The city is still prosperous, with a constant stream of traffic, and in the quiet, it is bustling and noisy. It has the bustle of a world-class city, but also the vanity and impetuosity of a world-class city. This is a bustling and impetuous world, and it has always been like this since ancient times. The streets are crisscrossed, and people of all kinds and races are always fighting for meaningless racial discrimination and money. Behind the survival, there is a demon king who is ready to destroy the earth. All this, everything in the city, is the same as before, without knowing any news, even the time of destruction. But it makes people look so pitiful. Badi stood on the windowsill of the presidential suite. The cold wind blew the hem of his windbreaker, and it kept flying behind him in waves. The sun shone on his indifferent expression. His skin like a white jade sculpture exuded a halo, and his giant-like eyes overlooked the whole city. His eyes were cold, without any emotion. The whole city, undulating with each other, was like the bony peaks in a landscape painting, reminiscent of the steel and stone forest rising from the ground, which was breathtaking. The whole city was taken in by his eyes. For a long time. Knock knock knock. The sound of knocking on the door rang out. After knocking for the 7th time without a response, Mike turned the golden door handle and opened the heavy dark wooden door. He carried a black briefcase and put it on the floor of the living room. Originally, he wanted to put it on the table, but the exquisite glass table was twisted into a ball by someone, like twisting paper, and piled in a corner with expensive sofas, chairs, etc., which looked like it had been tested and invented. This was Zatara's masterpiece. "Boss, what you want?" Mike said, and put the black briefcase on the soft carpet. He glanced at Badi's back. In the sun, Badi had a gentle glow on him, and his figure was softly shining, as if there was a layer of precious light radiating softly, like an immortal, newly unearthed gem. But Mike had a strange feeling, and felt strange in his heart. Why? Under the back of the light, I always felt a solemn feeling of impending storm. It was very heavy and oppressive. Sunbathing. Is it necessary to be so heavy? The air seemed to be heavy. It was as if the sunny city was secretly covered by an unknown dark cloud. Although Badi was usually very indifferent, Mike did not feel the pressure, but at this moment, looking at Badi's back, he felt as if something heavy was on the boss's shoulders. He was confused for a moment, and then put it behind his mind. Everyone has things to face, and perhaps the boss also has enemies to face. Just like himself, he also has to face many strange tasks from the boss. The boss has always shouldered a lot of things, and likes to look at the sun. He didn't understand it either, and was confused for a moment, but it was nothing. He then left the presidential suite directly. At this time, a black dot appeared in the sky above Manhattan. The sky was blue and the sun was warm in winter, so the black dot was very eye-catching. It was as small as an ant, but no one saw it. Badi's eyes quickly zoomed in. With a flash of his eyes, his sight had already passed through the scenery of the city's high-rise buildings and fixed on the black dot. The black dot exceeded the speed of sound, but no sonic boom cloud appeared. It flew towards the Four Seasons Hotel at a very fast speed, and the black cloak fluttered behind her. She flew in front of Badi and paused in the air. The cloak hung on her body, fluttering in the waves behind her, and her petite body floated in front of Badi. It was Raven. Her pale face revealed a crystal-like skin in the sun, and her dark purple lips were tightly pursed. She nodded to Badi. With a pale face, she was about to face her father, Sangang again. She still felt heavy and uneasy in her heart. Her petite body fell into the sunlight. The waving cloak behind her once again covered her trembling body. Her pale face was very tense, her black pupils were very stern and uneasy, and her body was a little stiff. Badi went into the hall with her, picked up the box that Mike had sent over, opened it, and there were 380 golden solar energy capsules arranged densely inside. This was the artificial intelligence error overload, using the energy of the solar reactor that was to be designed in the future, and it was manufactured in an expedited manner. If she couldn't survive this disaster, the future would be meaningless. Badi picked up a solar energy capsule with his fingers and said solemnly, "Every capsule here is enough to replenish my body's energy." Raven nodded to show that she knew. When Badi was unable to eat the capsules himself, she would feed him. When he and Sangang entered the spiritual world to fight, the outside world would be left to Raven to deal with. This method was very helpless. Life and death were not in their own hands. They could only trust Raven. Badi never wanted to entrust his life to others, but at this moment, there was no way. He was still too weak. He admitted his weakness, and there was anger and helplessness in his heart. At this moment, meeting Sangang was simply a devastating disaster. This ray of hope, whether it was the magic world, the Raven, or him, wanted to firmly grasp it. Zatora had already explained to Badi all the magic he knew, all the magic that had a little effect, and even the secrets of his own family. He had entrusted the hope of the entire magic world and the hope of the earth to Badi. The Raven transmitted all the magic about the Agarus sanctuary, Sangang's behavior, attitude, power, and the scene of destroying the Agarus sanctuary to Badi. This is a real demon. Destruction. Darkness is always around him. His temperament is unpredictable, and he acts recklessly. If Sangang had a slight intention to negotiate, Badi would not fight him head on, but lurked, and only when he was strong enough to fight him in the future would he start the killing. However, Sangang is a real demon, with unpredictable behavior and arbitrary destruction. This is a demon lord who cannot be negotiated. Humans will not negotiate with ants. This is destined to be a confrontation, and it may be a confrontation with no chance of survival. Sangang is so powerful that it is suffocating, and what they are fighting is just a projection. The projection is also enough to destroy the existence of the planet. How can it not make people feel suffocated? Badi's face is cold, his eyes are deep, and there is an extremely resolute will between his eyes. He took off his white windbreaker and landed on the ground. He took off his shirt, revealing a strong chest with crisscrossing scars, clear and smooth muscle lines, and a majestic chest like a mountain top. The sun shone from behind, making his figure unusually tall, like a mountain top pouring down, and the tall figure's shadow was shrouded on Raven's delicate body. "Focus!" Badi shouted, because he found that Raven seemed to be in a bad state. She felt uneasy about what she was about to face. Repeating the fear and memory of the past made her body stiff and stagnant. Chapter 137 The Raven's Seal Unsealed. Four Seasons Hotel, Presidential Suite. The sun shines in from the windowsill, shining on Badi's broad shoulders. He is topless, tall and slender, and his muscle outline looks like a white jade sculpture, full of beauty. There are traces of knife marks and scars, but it brings a silent cruelty and coldness to the muscles of this white jade sculpture. No matter who sees him, his resolute face, and the scars on his tall body, they will feel willing to believe in him from the inside. Because he has come through the mountains of swords and the sea of fire, his experience, his sonorous, firm tone, and the will revealed in his eyes, all make people believe in him. Believe that he can lead everything to a better future. A cold wind blew into the hall with the sun, lifting the curtains, and the layers were lifted up, with a beautiful and lonely sense of silence. Badi's shadow is like a mountain, covering the delicate Raven. Raven tucked herself in the cloak. She was indeed not concentrating, but she had arranged everything. In the past week, Badi brought her all the delicacies on Earth, which could be considered her happiest days. After eating all kinds of expensive and ingenious delicacies every day, she would do her work, communicate, and connect with the Agarus sanctuary. It was like a 9-to-5 office worker. After work, she would go home and sit in the restaurant to chat with Badi and eat a delicious meal. Sometimes, she hoped that such days could last forever without having to face the three palaces. But in the end, the connection was completed. The connection was not difficult. She had only been on Earth for about 3 weeks since she came from the Agarus sanctuary, and she could still find the coordinates clearly and return there. What's more, she spent a lot of effort to cover up and prevent the breath of the Earth from leaking out, so as to prevent the three palaces from arriving early. And now, in the last 2 hours left, there was actually no need to seal her own power. When the seal was opened, the emotions that were sealed were unlocked. Mother and teachers, the destruction of the Agarus sanctuary, the waves of regret, collapse, and despair that surged out, almost broke her down. She was 17 years old. A 17-year-old girl. She witnessed her father brutally killing people on the entire planet. Her mother and the teachers who treated her best were torn apart. Blood was splattered everywhere. It was a nightmare scene. Like the corridors of hell, it reflected in her heart. She was like a lonely lamb, confused, and came to Earth. If it weren't for Badi's sudden appearance, she would have been on the run from her father, running between various planets, and her whole life would be shrouded in the shadow of fear of the three palaces. Her body was frail. She shrank back in her cloak. Her eyes were confused, and she lowered her eyes dully. Badi's shadow completely enveloped her, making her even weaker, like a chicken shivering in the rain on a cold winter night. Suddenly, a long bar of chocolate appeared in front of her, wrapped in gold foil, and on the package, there was a small crow logo. The crow was laughing up to the sky, with its eyes curved and squinting. Very funny. The crow's confused eyes looked at the chocolate and gradually focused. Badi stared at her. His pale face was bloodless. Veins were faintly visible. People who have experienced heart-wrenching pain will be attracted to each other and understand each other, because they understand that painful despair is like a group of ants gnawing at the heart, suffocating, trembling, fearful, and thinking about stepping into darkness. Stepping into darkness, perhaps madness, perhaps mental disorder to live. But sometimes, hope and light are just a thin line. See if you can catch it. Badi has enough insight to give others hope and light, to capture others' hope and light. Just between a piece of chocolate. Raven suddenly burst into tears, suddenly collapsed, tears dripping to the ground. The soft carpet on the ground was like being corroded by strong acid, corroded a pit, with acidic, strong smelly smoke rising. Her forehead suddenly opened another pair of eyes. She had 2 pairs of eyes. 4 eyes wept together, flowing out acidic tears, corroding pits on the ground, and toxic smoke rising. I created a chocolate company for you, the Crow Chocolate Company. When you come back, there will be countless chocolates for you to enjoy. Badi said lightly, still holding out the chocolate to her. He found that Raven seemed to like chocolate very much. He didn't know if it was because it was the first food he came into contact with on Earth, or because of the bitterness that ended up with sweetness, the bitterness that represented pain, but in the end, it longed for sweetness. Raven took the chocolate. Tears did not stop flowing, looking at the crow logo, eyes curved and squinting, laughing at the sky, and couldn't help crying and sobbing, saying in a hoarse voice, "This crow is so ugly." "Really? I like it. This crow looks funny." Badi breathed a sigh of relief. Being able to say such words meant that Raven had come to his senses. 3 days ago, he felt that the seal of Raven was gradually loosening, and then more emotions were revealed. At this critical moment, Badi didn't want anything to happen. He knew that facing the three palaces had brought an indelible shadow to Raven's heart. A 17-year-old girl, faced with her father killing her mother, killing her teacher, and destroying countless lives in the Agarus sanctuary. The pain and despair, the picture was also transmitted to his mind. He could indeed feel the pain of Raven. To say that there was no impact, that would be an exaggeration. All of this was sealed by Raven herself. Now that the seal was released, it collapsed in an instant. This is also understandable. Blame it, she grew up in a good and lawful formation, and was taught to be kind in her heart. If she grew up in the environment of the devil, I'm afraid that the death of several people on the planet would not be taken seriously, and it would be another three-palace devil. Fortunately for Badi, she collapsed in front of him, so that he who was already prepared could deal with it. He took all aspects into consideration, and Raven's psychological condition was also there, and he had been prepared long ago, just as he expected. What a fragile girl. There is no trace of the evil style of the devil at all. Of course, it is also because of this that Badi will cooperate with her a little, and have a little trust in her. Raven ate the chocolate that Badi handed over with tears in her eyes and sobbed. It was bitter but sweet. She choked for a long time before she stopped. The soft carpet on the ground was already full of holes and thick black smoke rose. Raven's four eyes looked at Badi. Four eyes made Badi feel an illusion. It was an illusion of dizziness. Seeing four eyes, Raven hesitated for a moment, and her lips were about to say, "Let's start," Badi said suddenly, stopping what Raven wanted to say. Raven was stunned, wiped the tears from her face, and her pale face became firm. "Well, turn your back to me." Raven nodded. Badi was confused and felt a little strange. According to reason, he didn't need to turn around to carve the magic circle on his body, so asking him to turn around seemed a bit problematic. In an instant, Badi suspected that Raven was a bit strange. In his flash of doubt, he finally determined that Raven just didn't want him to see her devil face. This is just like a girl. In fact, she thought her devil face was too ugly and didn't want Badi to see it. When Badi turned around, he instantly felt a deadly feeling behind him that suffocated his cells. Goosebumps came out, and a chill rose from his spine. It felt like his brain was suffocating to death. This was Raven's full magic power, which made him feel deadly. Raven's face was full of blue veins, and her teeth were sharp and parallel like dense needles. She had four eyes and looked terrifying. It was a devil face. The cloak flew up without wind, like waves, revealing her thin body. Dark energy surged out of her body like the depths of a black hole, and the whole room was suddenly filled with evil and cold breath, and a cold wind was blowing. It was like the depths of the sky, where all kinds of evils were growing: anger, sadness, irritability, entanglement, contradiction, loss, cowardice, despair, arrogance, hatred, disgust, jealousy, inferiority, emptiness, greed, anxiety, and pain. The whole room began to be filled with evil energy, and ordinary people would fall into insanity and die directly. Her body was surging with dark energy, and evil magic was surging out. Above her head, a faint and transparent crow soul jumped out from the top of her head, gradually becoming clearer. Her body was already shrouded in darkness, and the nails of her 10 fingers were bright red, oozing blood. Badi felt like a needle piercing his back in an instant, and his body subconsciously wanted to escape from this sense of death. In addition, there were all kinds of evil negative emotions surging around him, which made him feel bloodthirsty, killing, and wanting to indulge in the bloody emotions in his heart. His will was like a rock, indestructible, and he suppressed his desire with a stern look in his eyes. "My blood will enter your body and make you very painful. Just bear with me. I will use my demon blood to carve a magic circle on your body with my fingertips. Let you transform into me and possess my aura. Sangan will want to seize me and control me. I will be in your body and fight with you." Yes. Over Manhattan, on a sunny winter day, a large mass of dark clouds suddenly appeared in the sky. The dark clouds were so dark that they made people panic, and so depressing that they made people emotionally manic. The dark clouds gradually spun into a vortex, slowly spinning. It seemed that there was an extreme evil inside, which was being transmitted. Polluting the world. Chapter 138 The Breath of Sangan. New York. The dark clouds were as black as ink, thick and sticky, dark, and spread very quickly. In an instant, they started from Manhattan and spread to cover the entire city of New York. The sun could not penetrate a bit, and New York was instantly dark under the thick dark clouds. Night, darkness, came unexpectedly. It appeared suddenly, without any signs, and appeared over New York. The dark clouds exuded an extremely evil and dark atmosphere, weighing heavily on the entire city. The evil atmosphere was like a big hand, suppressing it, making the whole city feel palpitations, and people couldn't help but look up, trembling with fear in their hearts. The prosperous and endless streets began to light up the headlights of the cars, illuminating the dark road surface. The continuous headlights reflected the busy, dense, and endless lights in the city at night. Under the night, they flowed like a long dragon of lights. If it was after 12 o'clock in the evening, no matter who it was, they would sigh at the beauty of this prosperous light, blooming the bright light of New York. But now it is daytime, and unspeakable terror permeates people's hearts. What the hell is this? Is it the end of the world? Some drivers can't help but stick their heads out of the car window, staring at the dark clouds. The dark clouds covered the entire city. Even if he looked far away, he couldn't see the edge. It just felt like the dark clouds covered the entire world, and the edge was completely connected to the steel high-rise buildings on the ground, as if they had already crushed the distant city. Some office workers in high-rise buildings looked up at the dark clouds, and were already sweating profusely. The sweat from their bodies soaked their suits. It was completely like facing something of a different level of life. It was as if ordinary people were facing the Tyrannosaurus Rex, a brutal upper-level beast, and they were already trembling with fear and their hands and feet were weak just by looking at it. This dark cloud, just looking at it, makes people feel scared. The cold wind in winter turned into a gloomy wind, making everyone shiver involuntarily. Cold sweat and goosebumps kept coming out of their bodies, and their bodies naturally became afraid. The strange, terrifying, and oppressing dark clouds exuded a breath of despair. Just a glance at it, and it felt like the heart was blocked. The feeling of suffocation, the feeling of being unable to breathe. The dark clouds seemed to have drained their oxygen, making them breathe heavily, holding their hearts tightly, their faces flushed, and only then could they vaguely breathe a little bit of oxygen to sustain life. This feeling of suffocation can frighten people to death. Street lights and lights on high-rise buildings began to light up continuously. Streets, households, cities, high-rise buildings, and continuous bright lights passed by. It seemed like a light performance was being held, and the bright lights were lit up one after another, illuminating the entire city. The bright lights gave people a little hope. The entire New York City was shining brightly, brighter than the previous nights, and shining brightly. It seemed that the lights of the city were fighting against the darkness pouring from the sky. However, something even more terrifying made the people of the city fall into the abyss of despair. The dark clouds twisted and spun. The seemingly slow ripples twisted the huge, sky-blocking clouds, twisting heavily in the heart of the entire city, forming a dark vortex in the middle. The bottomless, dark vortex twisted. It was like a hole in the sky, forming a vortex, spinning slightly, leaking filthy darkness, something extremely evil. A majestic, evil and desperate breath suddenly permeated from the vortex and overwhelmed the entire New York. It was like a 20-level typhoon that pressed down the entire New York without a shadow, and like a giant, carelessly flapping his hands, the hurricane breath swept over the ants, causing a huge disaster. This extremely evil breath just came out of the vortex, and the lights of the entire New York City exploded continuously with bang 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 bang. New York, which had just lit up, was extinguished in the darkness. New York fell into darkness in an instant, with evil explosions swaying and rising, and black smoke rising, stirring the bloodthirsty desire in people's hearts. The dark aura was stirring up the negative emotions in people's hearts, triggering their bloodthirsty, cruel, and evil natures. The people of New York suddenly rioted, their eyes filled with red light. They were extremely angry, extremely jealous, and their faces twisted. They began to riot, damage, smash, kill, and destroy everything around them. However, this was just a little breath revealed by Sangan from the other side of the space, which was enough to destroy a city, causing millions of people to riot, kill each other, and destroy everything. He found me. Raven's 10 fingernails were bright red and sharp like knives, oozing blood. She was cutting open Badi's chest, Badi's blood vessels, veins, and arteries with her own fingernails. Her fingertips were bright red and sharp as she cut open Badi's blood vessels, dripped her own demon blood, and set up a magic circle in it, which was detailed to the molecular level and the setting of blood cells, so that Badi could completely possess his own aura, and transform into himself. The moment she felt Sangan's breath, she paused, her face pale, and holding her breath, her eyes shrank, and they became sharp points in horror. Focus. Badi closed his eyes and spoke in a sonorous and firm voice. He was tall and straight, and the blood vessels on his chest that were scratched by Raven's nails recovered and showed a strange dark black color, as if the blood vessels were poisoned. The dark black texture spread over his body, covering a lot of it, and the entire upper body was covered. It was very hideous, and the hideousness destroyed his sunny, sculptural physical beauty. But at the same time, he had evil, like the breath of the abyss demon, appearing in the world like a demon, more like a demon than Raven. This kind of magic transformation of the body, pretending to change into a demon, brought Badi great pain. Every moment, it was a tingling that challenged the genetic nerves, piercing the deepest part of the brain, making people want to scratch it, scratch out all their blood vessels, and scratch themselves to death. Every moment of his body was fighting and resisting the demon blood cells of Raven, and it was stinging. He had to maintain the blood of Raven's demon cells and the demonic aura it exuded. This would make ordinary people collapse directly, but he resisted and controlled himself with a firm will. Hearing Badi's sonorous voice, as firm as iron, without the slightest wavering, Raven came back to his senses and concentrated on completing the last moment of the depiction. When Raven's sharp nails finally cut Badi's aorta, dripped in demon blood, and completed the last step, Badi's whole body was already covered with dark blue veins, spreading all over his body, and every blood vessel was protruding hideously, looking horrible and terrifying. Suddenly, Badi's whole body twisted, his eyes were cracked, wide open, and painful, dark blue veins were wriggling on his body, and the magic circle began to take effect, and began to change him. This was the pain of genetic collapse. There was no dead corner of his body in pain, and even his own cellular force field was torn apart. This was the pain of tearing the spirit apart, and the pain was deep in the spirit, which had already surpassed the pain level that could be felt in the flesh. He half knelt on the ground, clenched his fists, his finger bones turned white, pressed on the ground, and roared like a beast in a low voice. The dark-colored blue veins were like dragons swimming, and a lot of sweat came out, dripping on the carpet. The acid melted holes one by one, and terrifying black smoke rose. He half knelt on the ground in the black smoke. His naked body was hideous and terrifying. He roared in pain, roared in a low voice. His eyes suddenly turned red like blood in the black smoke, and the evil was faintly revealed in the black smoke, which was terrifying. The magic circle arranged on his body began to take effect, and his skin, head, and frontal bone began to change, gradually becoming smaller. A pair of eyes grew on his forehead, and his upright chest gradually shrank. His hands and feet became slender and pale, and became like a raven. This process was so painful that Raven was heartbroken. But in the end, Badi survived. When Badi stood up, Raven looked very unnatural. She saw a naked self, thin, white, and crystal skin, and flat chest. This was too embarrassing. She blushed for a moment, but then covered it up and hurriedly helped Badi put on her clothes. Until the end, Raven turned into a huge crow, with her body and soul blending into harmony. She merged into the raven body that Badi had transformed into. The two of them were truly combined and merged. This had the effect of the magic circle changing the body in half dimensions, and Badi's control and willpower. Ordinary transformation magic could not deceive Sangang. Only this kind of integration, exuding the breath of a real raven, could truly deceive Sangang. In the room, an evil breath suddenly spread. Badi was completely a raven, and no one could tell his disguise. He put on a cloak, and became a raven. Not long after, Zatura knocked on the door and came in, looking nervous. The entire city of New York was in turmoil, because of the aura revealed by Sangang. Finally, a stream of light rushed up from the roof of the Four Seasons Hotel to the center of the vortex, tearing the dark cloud vortex apart, splitting the entire dark cloud sky in half, allowing the sun to pour down, and the riot in the entire city of New York was quelled. Chapter 139 Agaris Sanctuary. Agaris Sanctuary. This place is like a crater, with large cracks on the ground. The earth is desolate and lifeless, the air is turbid, and the haze covers everything. Visible dust particles are suspended in the air, containing highly toxic oxides. The trees are completely withered and charred, without a trace of life. The sky is hot, red and turbid, like a wasteland after the end of the world. The entire field is gloomy and hot, and it is completely unsuitable for ordinary life to live. The space suddenly ripples, and the haze begins to twist and turn. The haze twists, and is implicated by the ripples, as if this place has become a central point. In an instant, a dark and deep vortex hole is formed. Inside the hole, connected to the depths, there are two figures in it, that gradually grow from a small dot in the distance to a larger one and approach. In an instant, they arrived at this field, and stood on the ground. Raven and Zatara stepped out of the vortex channel, and stepped on the cracked ground. This Raven was transformed by Badi. The real Raven merged with Badi, and hid in Badi's body. Is this hell? Zatara wore a magician's robe, which was complicated, and full of secret spells. It was a powerful family robe passed down from ancient times. He held a magic wand made of twisted dead vines. It was made from the vines of the Olympic sacred tree in ancient times, and had a powerful magic reaction. He cast a magic spell, to cut off the air for himself, and his eyes were shocked to scan this desolate area. It was a complete ruin and there was no life. All this was caused by a demon. What a powerful demon it was, causing a planet to become such a doomsday. Badi held his breath slightly, and his eyes covered by the cloak looked up at this area. This place is completely unsuitable for life to live here. The nitrogen in the atmosphere has been completely ionized, completely changing the nature of the electron sequence and the atomic arrangement. Nitrogen is one of the basic elements that make up amino acids, and amino acids are one of the essential elements that make up life. This means that in this area, no life will be born, and no life is suitable to survive here. The oxygen here has even evolved into an alternative oxide poison. For ordinary people, just a few breaths of air here are enough to cause violent convulsions, epileptic seizures, cardiac arrest, and brain cell death. Badi stretched out his arm from his cloak, and his skin felt sensitive to temperature. His white arm stretched out of the cloak, and suddenly it was like walking out of an air-conditioned room into the scorching summer. Every hair was slightly fluttering, and the pores felt the sudden rise in heat. There was a scorching temperature burning up along the skin of his arm, as if boiling water was scalding the skin. The average temperature here is as high as more than 80 degrees, which is close to the temperature of boiling water. The haze could not block their sight. Badi looked into the distance. In the distant area, the sky was connected to the horizon with heavy dark clouds. There was a huge sky-high mountain that reached the sky, reaching the sky, majestic and piercing the sky. That was the sacred peak of the Agaris Sanctuary, the center of the planet. Badi's eyes swept over and lowered a little. There is a town nearby, with strange dome-shaped pointed buildings scattered in an orderly manner, and one can vaguely see the prosperity of the past. What a prosperous city it was. But now, it has been dilapidated and turned into ruins, charred, and blood is everywhere. The strange thing is that there is no corpse. A feeling of anger and sadness surged into Badi's heart. This is the mournful emotion emitted by Raven in his body. He bathed himself in the blood of the entire planet. Raven was heartbroken, and anger surged in his heart. The entire Agaris Sanctuary is over. It was over at the moment when Sangang descended, and it was irreparable. This place used to be full of atmosphere and magic energy, flowers blooming, green trees, jade trees, tall buildings, and a strange magic flourishing era unfolded here. Birds chirped lightly, and people were gentle, kind, friendly, stable, and peaceful, just like the legendary paradise. Until her arrival, Sangang's pursuit came, destroyed all the beauty. This made Raven feel like a sinner. If she had not come here, the tens of billions of people on this planet would not have died, and their blood would not have become the bath water for Sangang to bathe himself. This made her heart pierce with pain, and she was extremely angry. Bart took a step, revealing Raven's calves and his cloak, and walked forward in his boots. The back of the cloak was thin and delicate, but Bart's unwavering steps made him seem like a giant who wanted to support the sky with his own strength and tear the sky apart. Zatara warned him from behind, "Be careful, succeed. Come back." He couldn't go with Bart to deal with Sangang, because he couldn't. The task given to him by the entire magic world was to cover up and block the coordinates that would connect this world to the Earth, and cover up the Earth so as to prevent Bart and Raven from failing, and Sangang from destroying the Earth directly. They were not qualified to deal with a demon like Sangang, and could only shrink back to save themselves, trying to hide and protect the Earth. He watched Badi walk away, his eyes revealing a complicated look. Badi had transformed into a raven, whose figure was very delicate and thin, and did not look very big under the cover of the cloak. His back was dark, and he lifted up a corner of his cloak, moving forward alone in the haze. His head, covered by the cloak, revealed his delicate white chin, and his eyes were clear and firm in the darkness, without a trace of hesitation. The raven in Badi's body was already crying, and the wailing echoing in Badi's heart was extremely desperate. Everything was destroyed by the three palaces. Badi had no comfort. He walked silently, walking in the wilderness ruins, to the dilapidated, black smoke rising, charred town. Under his footsteps, there were ruins and uneven rocks. The tip of his nose was full of burnt smells, unbearable dust, emptiness, and the black smell of burning buildings. The turbidity made people itch in their nasal cavity and want to sneeze. This is a ruin. His eyes gradually assimilated with the raven, showing a look of grief, performing the abyss of despair and grief. He gently stroked the broken wall with his hand. This destructive scene made him feel even more deeply. His forehead opened his eyes, and tears that corroded the ground were dripping from his four eyes. At this moment, he perfectly became the raven, connected to the raven's heart, and the state of despair and grief was reflected in him. He walked through the town, his figure under the cloak swaying, and stepped into the charred forest. Through the forest that was bright and peaceful in the past, and the birds sang softly, and passed by the depths of the lake where elves leaped in the past, but now it is dark and turbid, and has become poisonous water. She looked up at the sky. Finally, she came to the foot of a mountain. That was the sacred peak of the Agarus Sanctuary, the most sacred place in the Agarus Sanctuary. In the past, the light shone on the earth, and the warm breath was peaceful and tranquil. This is the most sacred region, the most sacred holy peak, and the center of this star. But now, there is only fear, and the breath of despair is spreading. The mountain peaks are high, and pierce the sky. The sky is black and thick, as if it has solidified. The dark clouds are scarlet, as if there is blood flowing inside. The placenta seems to be breathing, and it grows slightly hideously with each breath. It is huge and boundless, covering the sky and the moon, like a living thing. There is an evil entrenched on the top of the cloud, looking down from a high place, overlooking the entire planet. An extremely evil will, as if a giant has opened his eyes, with countless dark evils, looking down, grinning, and pressing down on this planet, making it shaky. Badi stepped forward, and the dark cloak he was wearing revealed a breath of despair. The figure was lonely, desolate, and desperate. He lowered his head, and was silent in the darkness and despair. He stepped alone onto the peak of the Agarus Sanctuary. Chapter 140 Sangang. The peak of the Agarus Sanctuary. The peak is 30,000 meters high, piercing the top of the sky. The black clouds in the sky are wrapped in scarlet clouds, flashing and breathing around the peak. The dark clouds and red layers are rolling, flashing, and glittering, like the heavy breathing of a living thing, swallowing and spitting out evil, overwhelming the entire planet. The sky is filled with oppression, madness, and an extremely evil atmosphere. Just one look is enough to make people go crazy and die of mental disorder, if their will is not strong enough. Countless evil waves that disrupt the mind are emitting, constantly attracting the bloodthirsty, tyrannical, and cruel nature of life. At the top, the peak of the mountain, where the peak of the peak was cut off, there is a red evil light rising into the sky, and the blood fills the sky. There are two huge suspended stone corridors here, connecting the opposite side. The corridors have no handrails or guardrails. They are so simple, like a suspension bridge on a cliff. There are traces of blood flowing on the ground, which has now turned into a black sticky substance, and stuck to it. Walking on such a wide corridor, people feel like ants walking on the side of the road, feeling a huge oppression and a thrilling horror. The two stone corridors intersect, forming a cross, as if two stone corridors are built on the crater of a volcano, crossing across the crater, and being illuminated by the red light, turning red and black. There is a nauseating turbid blood, and the smell of filth and unbearable odor emanates from under the corridor. Under the stone corridor, there is not volcanic lava, but the blood-colored flames of billions of corpses burning inside. The blood is refined with the fire of hell, and the blood essence of billions of corpses is filled inside the hollowed-out divine peak. The blood essence is like a burning flame, swaying in the sea of blood, shining a fiery and evil light, and the bright red light rises to the sky, reflecting in the dark and dense clouds nearby. From the outside, it is like a baby in the placenta flickering, weird and chilling, and there are hell demons breathing. At the center of the cross corridor, at the center of the peak, in the center illuminated by the flames of the sea of blood, there is always delicious blood. There is a stone chair that is dark and cold, standing tall, which is already the highest peak of the Agarus sanctuary. The cross represents holiness, light, and God. There is a huge human figure sitting on the stone chair, stepping on the cross corridor. His body is as red as blood, his skin seems to have no skin, and the red blood is directly reflected. Sangan. He is 100 meters tall, like a towering building, already as magnificent and majestic as a mountain, with perfect muscle lines outlining a terrifying red body. Any finger, nail, or toe is bigger than a human, and a hair is as tall as a human, which looks enough to scare people to death. The devil is unscrupulous, and does whatever he wants, not proud of gorgeous clothes and decorations. He is naked and majestic, sitting on a huge stone chair that towers in the sky, with a majestic posture, exuding an infinite evil breath, lazily and ruthlessly pressing the entire planet. 6 eyes were raised to his forehead, and the yellow pupils were clear and distinct, with a playful look, a cruel cold light, and a ruthless gaze on the world. On his forehead, there were huge black horns that curved up to the sky and pierced the sky. The wild black hair was behind him, sticking to the back of the stone chair. He sat casually, just sitting on a star. He sat on the stone chair, his legs casually spread out, and lazily rested his elbows on the right-hand side of the stone chair. His huge bright red body was slightly tilted, and his fist was pressed against the cheek on the right side of his face. He seemed lazy, but he moved his hand slightly, and even the void would tremble. One move was enough to walk out of the vacuum zone and suffocate all life. He was the Lord of Hell, the monarch of demons. Sangan. He had experienced countless eras, sweeping across the world, and sweeping in all directions. Born to bring darkness, evil, and destruction. As long as he could see, all the places were in darkness or destruction. All the demons and ghosts were subservient to him, serving him or becoming his food. Just like this time, he was very unhappy that his daughter, Raven, had abandoned him and fled. After all, the demon armies filled the entire star and all the lives of the Agarus sanctuary into the divine peak, burned it with the fire of hell, and cooked a pot of delicious blood soup. All the demon armies that followed him became seasonings, used by him as seasonings, and made him feel happy and happy after tasting it. And after feeling that his daughter, Raven, would return to him again, he became even happier. He leaned forward, without clothes, his cheek resting on the bones of his right fingers. His 6 eyes were happy, cruel, and cold, and his mouth was raised, revealing his sharp white fangs. He felt the breath of Raven. He looked at the end of the stone corridor, saw through the dark clouds that were tainted with evil, saw through the starry sky, saw the interstellar space. If he looked carefully, he could use his eyes as an astronomical telescope and see the scenery on Mars. Gradually, a petite figure appeared. The Raven was wearing a cloak, with a sad look under the hood of the cloak. She stepped a little bit, and appeared in Sangan's sight. Behind her, there was a hazy and vague sky, and the dark clouds were thick and boundless. Darkness and evil had become the horizon. In the background of the endless and dense dark clouds, she was the prey in the evil night, the food that was delivered to her door alone in despair. She stepped up the stairs alone and desperately, and appeared from the ground. The head covered by the cloak and fear first appeared in Sangan's sight, and then little by little, the thin and helpless body gradually rose up until the whole figure stepped onto the white corridor, and walked on the stone road, that was sticky with blood. The thin, helpless, and frightened body was already trembling, shivering constantly under the cloak. She could feel the blood under her feet, the smell of blood from the burning hellfire, and the swaying red light rising into the sky under the cross corridor, all of which made her extremely sad and angry. Sangang's mouth opened a wider arc, his fangs pierced his lower lip, and his 6 yellow eyes showed an interesting look, as if he had discovered a new world and something new, and was generally happy and excited. "You are very good," Sangang said. He was 100 meters tall, and even when he was sitting, the evil aura he exuded covered the starry sky, making people look up. Just his joking words were like an echo in the valley, resounding with a huge sound. Bati's heart sank to the bottom of the valley. Sangang was more powerful than he had imagined. Just looking at the evil aura emanating from him, the existence that stepped on the stars, dominated all life, and destroyed the planet. Any movement was enough to involve the power of destroying the world. Just looking at him was enough to plunge people into the abyss of spiritual despair. "Let go of the earth. I'm willing to be a puppet." Raven trembled in his cloak. His voice was sad and hoarse, his head covered by the cloak hood lowered, and his body trembled with grief and anger. Sangang's face was playful, and his 6 eyes stared at Raven, staring at the trembling and angry Raven, looking extremely happy and interested. "Your soul is very interesting." Chapter 141. See-through. The sacred peak of the Agarus Sanctuary. The cross corridor. In the hollow belly of the mountain, there is hellfire burning hot blood, emitting waves of filthy bloody stench. The air has a faint red light, dust particles are swimming, and the whole world is already bloody, reflecting the blood red. Sangang is like a mountain, pressing across the intersection of the cross corridor, sitting on a dark and cold stone chair, looking down at the Raven with a smile. The corners of his mouth are curled up, revealing white fangs. Bati's heart trembled. Raven also said that his soul has special features, but he can't see anything deep down. He feels that Bati's will is beyond ordinary tenacity and determination. Could it be that Sangang saw through his and Raven's disguises at a glance? "Father, I don't understand," Raven said, still showing his acting skills. Just like a raven in fear, trembling under the cloak, all of them are the same as before. Fear of his father, fear of all the people in the Agarus Sanctuary, who died because of him. Haha. Sangang's 6 eyes smiled. The laughter was huge and rumbling, shaking the dust red particles far away, forming circles of ripples. He was 100 meters tall, with a cruel face, violent and huge. The sound from his throat was like a hurricane blowing, like an earthquake rumbling on the earth, deafening. "My daughter, Raven, are you not coming out?" Sangang bared his fangs, put down the hand that was supporting his right cheek, straightened his waist, stood tall, and his 6 eyes were full of smiles, looking down at Raven like an ant. He was too familiar with Raven, originally created as a tool to test the connection between the multiverse and the realm of God. How could it not know the breath of its own blood? Moreover, Bati's soul was so bright, possessing such perseverance, will, and strangeness. In his eyes, it was as strong as a candle in the dark night. One glance was enough for him to see through everything. No matter how to cover up, it could not escape his eyes. It was just because he and Raven were in the same body, entangled with each other's breath, and it was a little difficult to see the essence of this soul. But it was too absurd to tease him with such a trick. The body of Raven stopped, being afraid in an instant, wearing a cloak, holding his head high. Under the brim of the cloak, a pair of eyes were clearly black and white, very bright, silently looking at Sangang's tall face. There was no trace of relief. Sangang indeed saw through their disguise at a glance. This demon monarch who had experienced countless eras and destroyed countless planets was easily able to see through Bati and Raven's elaborate disguises at a glance. They had studied Sangang's temperament, the external appearance of the transitional raven, the spacing of each magic circle, the effect, the information of the blood, how to conceal the fluctuation of the soul, and how to let Bati pull Sangang's consciousness into the spiritual world. But what made people despair was that all of this was not as good as Sangang's one glance, and he had seen through everything. This made people despair, but it was natural. To plot against a demon that could destroy the stars, a strong man who had experienced countless years of precipitation, Two people who were less than 100 years old. It was hard to imagine that if they succeeded, would Sangang still be alive now? The plot that had been prepared for many days failed with just one look. The figure of the raven suddenly blurred, and an illusory figure emerged from Badi's body. It was the raven. She illusory emerged from Badi's body, and Badi was wearing her equipment and clothes. As she stepped out of Badi's body, she gradually solidified from the illusory blur. She was a real raven. Her face was expressionless, and the brim of her cloak was lowered, covering her cold eyes. She sealed her emotions again, so that she could face her father indifferently without fear or grief. And behind him, Badi's whole body suddenly grew taller, his bones grew loudly, and he restored his original white jade-like body, with scars, a firm face, and cold eyes. His body was densely covered with dark veins and hideous protrusions, like a dragon swimming. Hey. He gritted his teeth, in great pain. His eyes were cracked, the whites of his eyes were bloodshot, his fists were clenched, and the muscles of his tight body seemed to be about to burst. Every pore on his body burst, and began to spurt black blood, like a hedgehog, splashing blood, causing him great pain. The blood of the devil is not pleasant, and every moment is torture. The original intention was to cut off his physical force field, which was like cutting into the pain deep in his spirit, cutting off the connection between cells, and forcing it in. Although there was a magic circle to cushion it, the feeling of having a pepper stuffed into his body was like a hot pepper, which would make people feel like they were numbing and crazy. In just a few seconds, the magic circle on Badi's body collapsed, and all the demon blood gushed out. He was breathing heavily, and the surface of his white jade-like body was flowing with black demon blood, accompanied by greasy sweat, which was extremely turbid and smelly. Raven turned around, her eyes under the brim of her cloak without any emotion. She pressed her palm on Badi's chest, and Badi's body appeared like a spring breeze, brushing every inch of his body, and washing away the stains on his body. A set of white suits was put on him, and the white windbreaker flowed down his back, making him look tall, resolute, elegant and iron-blooded. When all this was done, Raven and Badi looked at each other. She resolutely turned around, facing Sangang, took a step forward, lowered her head covered by the brim of her cloak, and said, "I'm sorry, father, I was just joking with you." The moment she turned around, she could see the heart of despair. Those were eyes without hope, empty and dead. Badi had experienced them before. This was despair. Badi was silent. He did not bring light to others, nor did he bring hope to Raven. There was no hope. Facing Sangang, there was only despair. Anger spread in Badi's heart. The desperate eyes of the raven were like gnawing at his bones. How? Deal with it. Sangang. How to deal with Sangang. How to deal with the demon lord. How to deal with the demon who can travel across the universe and destroy stars as easily as drinking water. There is not a single chance of winning, not a single possibility. There is not even a 0.0000000000001 chance that they can win. Badi's face was cold, his eyes were extremely cold, and his heart was extremely angry. His hands were clenched into fists, his knuckles were white, and thick arteries protruded from his neck. On his arms and body, blue veins were bulging like dragons. His chest was raised, and he was about to go crazy. Anger was growing wildly from the bottom of his heart, and it was like a rage that was gnawing at his soul. He was powerless to defy the will of heaven. He didn't have enough strength. He had no ability to save Raven. Facing the power of Sangang, once the plan failed, he would be of no use at all. Not to mention saving Raven, he couldn't even save himself. Anger was almost gnawing at his heart, making him crazy. He couldn't control his own life. His weak strength had no way to prevent death. His body's adrenaline increased like crazy. His heart was beating like thunder that destroyed the world, and his body was full of terrifying blue veins. His blood was surging at an unprecedented speed. Sangang suddenly stood up, breaking through the speed of sound, and stood up with a sonic boom. His head was covered by a sonic boom cloud. In the haze, 6 terrifying eyes were shocking. The dark devil horns protruded from the top of the cloud, and the explosion that broke through the sky exploded. In the haze of the cloud barrier, 6 pupils actually burst into shock, staring at Badi with shocking surprise. The wind blew down madly, and it was so cold that it froze people's blood. It blew all the red dust far away. The blood flames burning in the hellfire in the sky of the god peak reflected the light in a swaying manner. On the cross corridor, the black cloak was blown away, revealing the delicate body of Raven. She lowered her head and showed an indifferent and emotionless face. Badi clenched his fists, his knuckles turned white, and the wind blew his hair wildly, and his windbreaker fluttered. A handful of solar energy capsules appeared in his hand. The golden capsules were full in his right hand, and he held them tightly. He bared his teeth. His neck was thick with veins. His face was ferocious and angry. He looked up at the mountain like Sangong. His eyes were as angry and unyielding as a black hole. His left hand was so hard that the knuckles turned white. He stretched it forward and pressed on Raven's shoulder. Lift your head. Chapter 142. Remarks on the release. On shelves. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143 will not be updated today. No updates today because I'm sick. Chapter 144 everyone, no update today. It has been like this for the past few days, and it only returned to normal on October 1st. Chapter 145 will not be updated today. No update today. Chapter 146 will be updated tomorrow. Dengue fever is prevalent here recently. Yesterday, my mother suddenly had a fever, which scared me to death. Fortunately, my mother only had a common fever, and is now well. I will resume updating tomorrow. Chapter 147 There is nothing illegal. There is nothing illegal. So I have no choice but to stop updating for one day. Chapter 148 Destruction. Badi stepped forward and stuffed the solar energy capsules on his right hand into his mouth. He swallowed them all with a fierce look and a lump in his throat. There were 380 solar energy capsules, each of which was enough to replenish Badi's current physical energy. 380 capsules were completely beyond Badi's physical limit. His body reacted instantly. The huge solar energy in his body exploded and filled his body. The energy penetrated into the cytoplasm and instantly evaporated the cytoplasmic fluid. The cell nucleus wailed and melted in pain. The overly powerful energy exceeded the cell's absorption limit. The cell could not withstand such a strong solar energy. His body immediately began to dissolve cells due to the strong solar energy and began to collapse. The windbreaker on his body evaporated and disappeared, and a strong piercing light permeated his white jade-like body. This painful process was too painful to scream. A strong light pierced from every pore, which outshone the surrounding blood-red glare. His body had become a huge piercing sun on the cross corridor, bursting with dazzling light, just like a sun about to explode. However, the next moment, he had another change, and the change was very fast, just in the blink of an eye. The dissolution of cells means that the next step is that the genes are about to collapse. Just as the cells dissolve, the force field of the cells collapses and disappears, and his mental power is completely liberated from the cells. He has studied mental power with Zatara and explained in detail to Badi the secret mental power meditation method, concentration method, and application techniques of the Zatara family. A magician uses mental power and soul to pry the world. Badi's soul and mental power are extremely powerful, so powerful that even the Kryptonian gene, which is the most stable gene in biological stability, can transcend the limitations of genes because of his spirit. At that time, he didn't know about mental power and didn't understand the role of mental power and soul. Now, after various teachings from Zatara and Raven, he has already deeply understood the power that can explode. In the next moment, his mental power penetrated into the deepest part of the hematopoietic bone marrow, twisting the genetic body of Krypton with the most tyrannical and angry will. Roar. At the top of the god peak, the distant clouds were surrounded by thick black. In the inner layer, above the cross corridor, the flames of hell on the peak below flickered, exuding a cruel bloody smell that filled the entire peak. There were blood-colored particles floating like mist, a hazy and bloody mist. A huge roar broke through the hazy blood-colored mist, and the blood-colored mist was torn by the violent ripples, and the waves spread out in circles, and flew far away. Badi roared to the sky. His voice was like thunder and fury, shaking and stirring, and the ripples were about to burst the air. His high chest broke through his shirt, his body swelled like an inflatable ball, and the hematopoietic cells in his bone marrow were running like crazy. He distorted the genetic body of the Kryptonians, and instead of arranging them in a stable and stable genetic sequence, he used his mental power to stimulate them, and they burst out with the last wave of violent growth power. This situation is actually the ancient Kryptonian scientists who use the Kryptonian body to study the research direction of Doomsday and burst out with powerful and unmatched power. But he is different. He has no continuity, no evolution, no possibility for the future. He is not like Doomsday. He just bursts out a wave of power and then disappears, dies, and ceases to exist. His body keeps breaking bones, growing, and then barbs come out, piercing his skin. He is in great pain, and his body is so hideous that veins are like raging waves in a river. Thick keratin is generated on the surface of his body. Countless cells grow and die to form a protective substance, which makes his epidermis thick. In the end, his body is hideous, terrifying, and painful. He grows into a 7-meter tall, violent, cold, bone spur piercing, like a demon. He is not as bloated as Doomsday. Instead, he still maintains a human form, with a slender figure, and the outline of his muscles is violent and thick. It seems that he is wearing a layer of close-fitting armor. His face is cold, and still maintains his original appearance, but there is no expression on his face, only a pair of cold and angry eyes. There were bone barbs protruding from all over his body, as if he was wearing a bone spur armor. Ferocious, and with a different kind of cold beauty, like a humanoid demon with bone spurs protruding from the abyss, standing coldly and angrily in the cross corridor. The world seemed to be pierced by the bone spurs on his body, which was terrifying. No. Raven stared, and in an instant, her mood was agitated, breaking through her sealed emotions and shouting fiercely. She knew what Badi was doing, exploding his power at the deepest level. Badi's body can only withstand the power of 10 solar energy capsules at most, and if it exceeds, the body's genes will collapse. His soul is resolute, resulting in a strong mental power that is strong enough to break the genetic limitations, but it is impossible for him to withstand 380 times his current power at once. He can only use his mental power and soul to distort the power of the deepest gene collapse, so that the Kryptonian genes can barely maintain, and burst out in an explosive wave of power. Once this wave of power is over, the body will collapse and die directly, and it will be difficult to survive. It's just too fast, and she can't stop it in time. The change happened in an instant. The moment Badi took 380 sun capsules, his body began to emit fierce light, like the sun, and then it grew wildly, becoming a 7-meter tall, slender figure, like a cold bone spurred demon wearing bone spurred armor, standing alone in front of Raven. The bone spurs on his back pierced his body, which was shocking. Raven gritted her teeth, and looked at Badi's devil-like back in pain, still shedding tears and roaring, "Are you crazy? You will die." She was more excited and roaring than ever before, and she even pulled off her hood in anger, revealing a pale, roaring, and desperate face with tears. Obviously, she had already surrendered to Sangong, and she only needed to beg Sangong to let go of the Earth and Badi. In this way, the Earth can survive. Badi can also survive. However, this was just Raven's naive idea. Badi never believed that Sangong would let him go, let the Earth go. Even the Raven was just a tool of Sangong. What negotiating position did it have? Stop. Everything changed too quickly. Sangong's red body towered up into the sky, and the devil's giant horn pierced the sky. Six Eyes looked at Badi in shock. He even stood up from the stone chair in shock, because he saw Badi's soul. With just one glance, he saw that Badi's soul had great specificity and specialness, and had great potential, which was more valuable than the Raven he made. Without hesitation, he would rather use 10 million ravens, 100 million ravens from different multiverses, to exchange for this soul. Because this soul has the potential to transcend the multiverse, transcend the world, and transcend the protection field of the Speed Force. The potential that is not limited by time, space, or rules. This is simply a characteristic that only a unique existence can have. It is manifested in this soul, and it has shocked him, even after he has experienced countless cosmic eras. How could such a characteristic be manifested in such a weak soul? It was the only one in the universe, transcending time, space, rules, and the only god in the realm of God. Just like his body, it was the only existence. This was simply unbelievable and ecstatic for him. However, at the moment, when he was shocked, Badi had already taken 380 solar energy capsules, which had an indestructible destructive effect on Badi's body and spirit. Badi's soul undoubtedly had great uniqueness and potential, but everything was just potential. Now it was so weak, how could it withstand such destruction? Badi's behavior made him furious. This was simply destroying his own spoils and his own things. This soul, it belonged to him. I'm going to eat you. The 3 palaces and 6 eyes burst into anger, and their eyes instantly turned red, reflecting the deep red color of hell. From the sky, a red demon's palm reached down, huge, covering the sky and the sun, with no lines on the palm, bright red like blood, and the evil nails were sharp, deep and cold, ice red. The red demon's hand reached down from the sky, breaking through the speed of sound, tearing the atmosphere like tearing a transparent veil, and pressing down on Badi with the pressure of a meteorite. Badi raised his head, and stood alone and cold in the cross corridor. His face was cold, and had white bone spots, like a fallen evil demon. The protruding bone spurs were cold, and contained great power. The red demon's palm fell like a meteorite from the sky, and the air pressure was squeezed by the demon's palm, and flew wildly in circles. Under his palm, it seemed that there was a pressure of 10,000 pounds squeezing down, crushing people. Boom. A loud sound was heard. The red demon's palm touched Badi, and suddenly there was an explosion with a loud sound. The ground of the corridor was shattered, and turbid dust rose up. The dust was everywhere, and the red light of the hellfire under the god peak and the blood-colored mist flew wildly, and left this area. Raven opened her eyes with tears. Her cloak was blown away, revealing her delicate body, and she was worried. Sangang was too violent and tyrannical, enough to scare her. Gradually, the dust dissipated. The ground under his feet had already cracked into a big pit, and his calf stepped into the ground, and the cracks spread out, bearing the powerful force. Badi's face was cold, his hands were raised to the sky, holding up the bright red devil's palm. His body burst out with violent power, tearing the stratum corneum on the surface of his body, and the bone spurs were hideous. He held Sangang's finger, and was wrestling with him. In the dust, Badi's cold and lonely back, the sharp bone spurs protruded, deep and terrifying, supporting the sky in Raven's eyes. Chapter 149 Crow. Raven's heart was stirred. Badi's cold, bone-spurred demon-like back supported Sangang's attack with his hands. This gave her a speechless shock and a surging emotion in her heart. It was impossible to describe the surge of many emotions at this moment. Badi's back, with sharp barbs sticking out, was filled with dust, holding up his hands to the sky, resisting the attack from the most powerful demon in the universe and the stars. In front of her, he resisted Sangang's attack. He was like a demon, but his actions were like the greatest great man, supporting Raven's sky. The back of him wrestling with Sangang under the palm of the bright red demon occupied her eyes. It was too difficult to deal with Sangang. Raven just wanted to surrender, and begged him to let go of the earth and Badi. However, Badi told her with his actions, that he should not surrender, not beg, and use his life, to fight and face it. Only violence can be used to fight violence, which is more evil than the devil. Only by transforming into a demon in hell can the devil be torn apart. At this moment, Raven gritted her teeth. Her tears were bitter, but with a deep warmth. The heart that dared to face Sangang and fight was revived. Badi was in front of her, giving her the light to fight against fear and the heart to fight against fear. She could feel from behind how strong and unyielding Badi's body was. But this was a will to die, which made her angry. She didn't want Badi to die. Damn Sangang. Damn it. She screamed, anger bursting from her heart, and her cloak flew up like crazy. Her forehead opened, her eyes, her 4 eyes were red, and countless dark energies in her body surged up from her feet. The crazy dark energy swept her thin body like a tornado, and the violent ripples and air ripples spread rapidly, creating a terrifying scene. The outer layer of the dark evil cloud of the entire Shen Feng was swung into circles of black clouds by the energy burst by Raven. The dark clouds fell into the lake like a stone, rippling out circles of waves, and the sky formed circles of rolling black clouds, encircling the center point, the peak of the gods. The existence of the raven broke the scene of the wrestling between Badi and Sangang. Although it was only a moment of wrestling, Sangang's power seemed boundless, surging violently, and a huge force bursting down from the sky. The kinetic energy plus speed was more terrifying than any meteorite, carrying a strong and huge force that destroyed the world, as terrible as tearing the sky. Badi's figure in front of his bright red devil's palm was as weak as a toy, constantly bursting the keratin of the epidermis, splitting the deep red muscles, and then reorganizing, bursting out with power crazily. His face was cold, and there was no longer any nerve reaction on his face. In the explosion, the nerve connection that showed facial emotions was torn. Now he only had explosive power, unable to make any expression, and unable to express any mental burning, tearing, destructive pain, and pain in the soul. Only his eyes were filled with surging and cold anger, extremely cold. Boom boom. Sangang's huge palm was propped up by him. He wanted to close his fist, but it was forced open by his explosive power. For this reason, Badi had burst, tearing many muscles and bones in his body, causing great pain to tear his spirit. Pain has become his strength, erupting in madness, and reorganizing into stronger muscles, erupting with all the afterglow of power. The ground has sunk to Badi's thigh, and huge cracks have spread, shocking. Suddenly, an overwhelming sound of birds screaming rose up, echoing over the entire god peak. The screaming sound was high-pitched and piercing, ringing over the entire space, and the sound wave black pattern vibrated wildly, and some of the dark clouds near were shattered and disappeared. In the hollow interior of the god peak below, the fire of hell was like meeting water, and was passed by the sound wave black pattern, swaying and extinguished in an instant. The god peak did not have the red light of the light of hell. The entire peak was submerged in darkness, and then the stars lit up again. In the sky, behind the black clouds that had been swept away, the stars of the bright starry sky were revealed, and the stars were emitting flickering light. The stars seemed to be within reach, shining and illuminating a terrifying scene. The 100-meter tall Three Palaces demon, with a tall body as red as blood, was evil and terrifying. He stepped on the entire planet, and the flickering brilliance of the universe and the stars became the background of his dominance over the universe. Badi, with bone spurs and barbs on his body, had a cold face. He held up his hands to the sky and resisted the huge Three Palaces demon, as if he was holding up the pressure of the entire starry sky. His will was indestructible and his strength could bear the sky. Nothing could bend his spine. Raven turned into a crow, soaring up, occupying half of the sky. Under the glittering brilliance of the stars, reflecting the starlight, the crow was huge and dark, and emitting terrifying fluctuations. Under the starry sky, Badi and Raven attacked the Three Palaces, as if tearing the starry sky apart, making the starry sky bleak and colorless. A huge crow rose from behind Badi. The crow was dark and huge, and was made of energy. Every black feather and tiny gap had a magic array change. She spread her huge wings in the darkness, covering half of the sky. The high-pitched and piercing voice was like the divine bird in ancient mythology, whose scream could destroy the world. However, this was a crow. It represented an ominous sign. Crow, how dare you? Sangang was furious, and her roar blew up the atmosphere. The whole planet seemed to be crumbling. The peak of the god shook, and the blood sea that extinguished the fire of hell stirred up thousands of layers of blood-colored waves. In response to Sangang, there was an even louder bird cry, and the cry spread throughout the planet. The raven turned into a huge crow, soaring and covering the sky. In a flash, a violent fluctuation broke out. She was like a moth flying into a flame, seeking her own death. The huge black crow instantly turned into a black stream of light, and rushed towards Sangang's body. The twinkling light of the stars in the sky could not reflect the speed of Raven. Only a black afterimage was left in the air, and then it hit Sangang's chest. Bang! This sound permeated the entire huge planet, creating a violent airflow like a level 30 tornado, and even bursting the atmosphere. The planet seemed to have a leak, and a huge and violent hole was pierced through the atmosphere that protected the planet. A huge vacuum environment appeared in an instant. I don't know how many eras I haven't felt such a sharp pain. It appeared from Sangang's chest. The huge chest, the sternum sank deeply, and the red bones were inserted. The bright red blood splashed out like rain, rising towards the weightless environment. Sangang's whole body seemed to be tilted, and the huge mountain was about to tilt and collapse backwards. Badi felt the power in Sangang's hands loosen and leave his hands. He looked up and saw Raven under the starry sky, his cloak fluttering in the waves, and his thin and delicate body seemed empty, lonely, and floating under the huge starry sky. Chapter 150, Exploding Heart. Badi's pupils burst into a violent cold light, and his face was cold. In an instant, golden sunlight burst out from his body pores, tearing and burning his body. His chest was high, and the barbs on his body were hideous and terrifying. His muscles gathered terrifying power, bursting out the golden terrifying light of the sun, surrounding his body and rising. He burst out the energy of his body, which was too huge for the divine power to fully control. It could only be used to violently strengthen his own cellular power and violently strengthen the power of his next attack. He was like a Super Saiyan, and his whole body was rising with hot solar energy in the darkness. The cracked gravel on the ground around him rose up without weight, and the sound of boom 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 shook the air around him, burning and twisting the air. His face was cold, his chest was raised, and his body had hideous bone spurs, like a demon. With the golden solar energy rising, his image could be described as a hell demon with cold bone spurs and the image of Super Saiyan energy, which looked cold and hot. As soon as he stepped on the pit, which was already cracked, it sank deeper, and the spider web spread even more. Countless huge cracks cracked open with a sound of crack. This corridor, which was a kilometer wide and 8,000 meters thick, suspended in the center of the sacred peak, instantly shook, and countless pieces of rubble fell into the sea of blood. The stone of this corridor was the strongest stone in the Argolis sanctuary, harder than diamonds on earth. Even so, it could not withstand Badi's power and was shattered. Wherever Badi stepped, this kilometer-wide corridor, which was 8,000 meters thick, was completely collapsed. Huge cracks appeared along the corridor, and large pieces of rocks fell into the sea of blood, splashing huge blood-colored waves. The rubble rose wildly with the solar energy overflowing from Badi's body. He knelt in the weightless rising rubble, his face grim, his eyes had turned golden. The golden energy suddenly burst out, and his legs jumped. The corridor was completely hit hard, and the huge force broke the corridor directly, breaking off large pieces of dark and cold stone, falling into the sea of blood. Affected by the power of Badi's legs, the continuous corridor could not bear the pressure, and large pieces of corridor rocks broke off one after another, and fell into the sea of blood, smashing out huge blood waves, hitting the rock wall of Shenfeng, and crashing out countless blood-colored bubbles. Badi's whole body turned into a golden stream of light after image, passing through the bright starry sky, passing through the stunning stream of light, and shooting towards the chest wound of Sangang who was falling. No. Stop. Sangang's 6 eyes were filled with anger, a rage that was about to drive him crazy. Red evil light shone from his eyes. He stared at the red light, and looked at Badi with pain as he rushed up. I'm afraid that neither Raven nor Badi would know. Sangang. At this moment, he was the one who was most worried about Badi. He was worried that Badi would squander all his energy too quickly, leading to death and the dissipation of his soul. As a result, he would not be able to get Badi's soul, the spoils. Badi's soul was far more important than these meaningless battles. Even his projection could dissipate, letting go of the earth, letting go of all the lives in this universe, giving up everything in this universe. As long as he got Badi's soul, he could give up this universe. But now, Badi was destroying his own soul like a self-mutilation, which made Sangang's heart mad with hatred. This was everything, beyond dimensions, the only existence, not subject to rules, time, or space, immortal, absolute immortality, the only characteristic of existence. This kind of existence does not exist in the multiverse. Outside the multiverse, even in the realm of God, as far as he knows, there are only a few hundred of them, pitifully few, but also so powerful that the universe trembles. Just like this, it appeared in Badi's soul. This characteristic is simply a crazy existence. Even if his body is already the only existence, he still cannot abandon a being with this soul characteristic. In fact, as long as Sangang obtains this soul, cultivates it into the only existing food, and then devours it, it will be enough to strengthen his strength again. At that time, he can even become the existence of the second ladder of hell, and even challenge the Lord of Hell. Maybe he can compete with Lucifer and completely take over hell. How can Sangang bear to let Badi die with such precious food? How can he bear to let Badi use his strength? He almost wanted to hold Badi in his palm and protect him. He was so sad that he was afraid that Badi would melt if Badi died like this. Sangang was heartbroken and sad, more than anyone who loved Badi, and more angry than anyone who loved Badi. In Sangang's angry eyes, the golden energy on Badi's body surged violently and shot directly to his chest like a stream of light. His face was extremely cold, his eyes reflected golden light, and his body was covered with barbed bones, which looked like a demon. In the golden energy, there was a contradictory feeling of light and darkness, justice and evil, demons, and angels. The body in the golden energy suddenly expanded, and Badi's arms were particularly swelled wildly. The barbed bones were ejected and vaporized in an instant. The muscles expanded wildly, and the blue veins like dragons were ferocious. The blood inside rushed through his body and the power gathered in his fist. His fist lit up with golden light, illuminating the dark starry sky, brighter than any star. Bang! The golden light illuminated the entire starry sky in an instant. Sangang's chest had already been hit by Raven, and this place was already a vacuum area. No sound was transmitted, and only the strong light tore through the dark starry sky. Sangang's chest, which had already been hit by Raven, had a bright red sternum stuck upside down, blood was splattered, and the huge heart could be faintly seen rumbling like a car engine. Batiksha brought the energy of the sun and hit Sangang's heart with a huge golden fist. In an instant, Sangang's heart could not bear the weight. This absolute power surged, and the concentrated solar energy burst out from his fist, hitting with unparalleled force, exploding a fist beam of light, shooting into Sangang's heart. The bones in his chest that protected his heart were squeezed, sunken, and directly inserted into his heart. Before he had time to burst out blood, the energy of the golden fist had already penetrated his bright red skin, piercing his heart, and blowing the whole heart to pieces. Blood rushed up to the sky, and blood beads rose in a vacuum environment, flashing bright red with evil. In an instant, a big hole appeared in Sangang's chest heart. The heart of the entire chest had penetrated the air, and the heart was blown up, with a huge hole punched out. Badi flipped over in the air, unloading this powerful counterforce. The golden energy faded, revealing his slender, barbed skeleton and hideous figure. For this punch, he used the power he could mobilize now, about a quarter of his power. There were also violent solar energy capsules in his body, absorbed by his cells, strengthening the cells, and transforming into huge power. Only when the energy was exhausted, his body would collapse genetically, his mental power would be unable to maintain, and his soul would dissipate. With the help of the recoil force that blew up Sangang's heart, he flipped over in the air, adjusted his position, and flew over to the vicinity of the raven floating in the sky. He picked up the raven in his left hand, like holding a baby, letting the raven lie on his arm. He descended from the sky and landed on another corridor. He landed with a rumble, stepped out of the cracked ground, and stood up straight with his slender body, his eyes looking at Sangang. Sangang, he's not dead yet. Raven was pale, hanging on Badi's left arm, looking weak. She used her soul and her own dark energy to launch physical and spiritual attacks, which had only a little effect, making Sangang dazed for a moment, giving Badi a chance to blow up his heart. But even if the heart was blown up, it would not be a big deal for Sangang. I know. Badi said. He could feel that Sangang still had extremely strong life reactions. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.